She has spoken in different countries around the world and appears on television and the radio frequently to different unborn children, the elderly and disabled, and the dying. She often debates against abortion in the college campuses and has written pro-life textbook for schools. She has produced many videos and animated movies on pro-life. And she met her husband, Miguel or Michael, while she was having a mission trip. So life starts somewhere else, you know. So you meet your partner somewhere else and you become united, and then you start another new mission in order to give value for life. And they have 4 children and 2 are gone back to their year. Well, so with the active and alive, and they are really promoting to give respect for life. And the topic itself is really giving for us philosophical foundation or the notion for a basis for our own life. So in the name of Jesus Youth and the name of pro-life movement and the name of religious here in Carmel, I welcome you and to deliver your thoughts and views and opinions for us, or making it very simple, enlighten us with your experience itself.
Hello. Hi. How are you? It is good to be with you. So I have come, as Father said, from the United States of America. And I worry that the buzz might... Are you working on the buzz? Yes. It might get very distracting for you to have to listen. So just one moment here from the United States to talk about the mission of Prolife. And in the United States, I love my country. We have a beautiful country, just as you love yours. And we have good values, good families, and good faith, and good food, and good music, and good art, and good architecture. But there is also a very sinister evil that creeps and seeps throughout my culture. And what you see of America from India, when you watch our news, and when you watch our television and our movies, and when you read books about us, and when you listen to our music, you see the sinister. Only the sinister, the evil. Right? Because our media and our newspapers and our music and television and movie industry has been taken over by those who no longer believe in God, who no longer believe in the value of the human person, who no longer believe in marriage and family. And so it looks as if America has completely lost its senses. But it is not true. Don't let them fool you. America is filled with millions of people like you and I who fight for the truth every day. Being in India has been amazing to my family. I actually have 6 children. 4 are in heaven. I had miscarriages, but we named them and we pray to them every night. And I have 2 children who are living. And my family here in India is amazed by your culture. Everywhere we look, there are churches. People believe in something. Whether it is a Hindu temple, or a Muslim mosque, or a Christian church, or a Catholic parish. Everyone believes in something. In the United States, so many people are following the Pied Piper, following the messages of media, music, and entertainment to believe in only themselves. And it is not because they are evil, it is because they are being misled. And they have fear to live for something bigger than themselves. In the United States, abortion is legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. For any reason whatsoever. You do not need to have your permission of your judge or your parents or your spouse. You do not have to have a disability, a handicap in the child. You do not have to have any problem at all. You just need to go into the clinic and say, I want an abortion. And they must give you one. No questions asked, but money taken. In the United States, abortion proliferates because of money. It is expensive to have an abortion. And the abortion industry makes millions, even billions of dollars in the United States. And so it is very powerful. And the organizations that perform abortions have created very professional organizations. One of them is called Planned Parenthood. And they have infiltrated the schools, the libraries, the government, entertainment, and media. And so they have a very strong influence in my culture. For example, in America we have public libraries. Do you have that here?
Yes.
Where you can go in, you get a library card, and you go in and you check out books, you keep them for a while, and then you bring them back. Hopefully you bring them back. Well, I used to be able to bring my children to the public library. They have a big, beautiful children's section, bigger than this room, with thousands of children's books. But I can't bring them with me any longer. Because on the shelves, every 10th book is a book that is immoral, that teaches evil. Books like Heather Has Two Mommies. Books like Are You a Boy? Are You a Girl? Or something else. Books that teach that divorce is okay, that homosexuality is noble. Books that teach that parents who abandon their children for their career is a good thing for the culture and teaches the children that they must be brave. Books that teach even that abortion is good. There is a children's book in America called Sister Apple, Sister Pig. And it is about a little boy who is 4 years old, and he tells the story of how his mother had an abortion. And he is so glad because now his sister, the one who was aborted, is a happy ghost. He calls her a happy spirit. And he can have a friendship with her instead of fighting over toys with her if she were alive. These are the things we battle in America. So I cannot even bring my children to a public library. We do not bring our children to school. The schools have been infiltrated by the evil. Public schools are required by law to not teach that there is such a thing as a boy and a girl. Your gender is whatever you want it to be. They are required to not teach about pro-life. They are required to not teach about sexual morality. And so I cannot bring my children to school. So we homeschool our children. And that is allowed in our country. Even many of the Catholic schools have now begun to teach these things. Yes. I cannot bring a television into my home. We don't have a TV at my home. Hard to believe, right? But we don't have television because 95% of what is on television is so immoral that you would think it was pornography. And they teach these things that are against our Catholic faith. And so, we find other ways to educate our children, other ways to bring them good books, other ways to bring them entertainment. But how did this happen? How did this happen to my culture? America used to be the strongest Christian nation. We were founded on Christian principles. We believed in life for all, liberty for all, pursuit of happiness for all, property rights. We believed in these things. And the country was united. But it is now very divided. 50% of the American population believes that abortion is wrong. And 50% of the American population believes that abortion is good. So it is a constant battle for the soul of the American people. Here in India, you have very similar problems. Perhaps there is differences in the culture, but the problems are similar, and the crisis is growing greater here. more and more young people like you are beginning to believe that abortion is not so bad. After all, women have rights. Women should be free. Men should not have to be responsible if they don't want to be for a child, especially if the child is handicapped, or if they are poor, or if they will be burdened, overburdened in some way. And so the same ideas that have crept into the human heart in my country are creeping into the human heart in your country. I've been told by young people here in India that many young Indians are beginning to believe that the unborn child now is just a blob of cells. Because this is what they hear Americans saying. It's just tissue. It's not really a human being. Don't worry. It doesn't even look human until it's much older. Don't worry. We've been told by our friends here in India that many young people are distracted by their gadgets, by opportunity, career, education, and that those things are becoming more important than marriage, than family, than children. And so I see these problems are coming up in your country as well as mine. But there is good news. I am not only here to share a warning, I'm also here to share good news. Here is my family. That's my husband, Michael, on our wedding day. We got married in a big church. And in the United States, a big wedding is 100 people. Whoa, 100 people. I made the mistake of announcing on radio that I was getting married, and I told when and where, and 500 people showed up to my wedding. That's a really big wedding in America. So now we had to provide food for all these people. And it was like a miracle of the loaves and the fishes, where we just divided what we had and everybody had enough, so it was good. I was 41 years old when I had my first child. I got married late in life. I thought I would be a nun, but they wouldn't take me. They found out that the only reason I wanted to be a sister was because I liked the habit. They said, this is not for you. And I was sad. But I became a single person, consecrated in the world to do good. And I followed my mission until I met my husband. It wasn't my husband yet. And I fell in love. And I realized God was calling me to marriage. Marriage is so important, so critical. Right? You're seminarians, yes? Yes. And you must teach the people of India that marriage is a gift, and it is sacred, and it is good, and it is beautiful, and it is a calling. It is a calling to mirror the image and likeness of God, right? Through our bodies, by uniting with one another in the same way that God unites himself with us. So that is my first child, Juliet, when she was born, the day that she was born. And I love that picture, right? I am so happy, and she is so miserable, right? She just wants to go back. And then these are my children now. Juliet is 9 and Elizabeth is 6. This was their birthday in January. They both turned age at the same time. And they're playing with another Indian family right now, so you will not be able to see them, unfortunately. So we made sure we had this picture. But I want to share with you just a little bit about what our culture, with some similarities to your own, what our culture teaches about human rights. And maybe before you look at that, I don't know, don't read that too much. I have a story to tell you. Before I do that, I want to start with a story. Now, I know this story will be a little shocking, but I tell it because I want you to really understand what goes on in the mentality, in the minds of people who lose God, lose faith, lose family, lose hope. The story I will tell you is very common in the United States. I was at a big conference. There were about 20,000 people, and I was giving talks at the conference. And it was a Catholic conference. And I was in an elevator, rushing to my talk upstairs, and the doors closed, and there was only one other woman in the elevator. And this is when I was single. I was not married yet. And I was very skinny, even maybe 20 pounds lighter than I am, and skinnier than I am now. And she was a big woman, very big, and married. And she was looking at me like this. We had a long way up to go. And I said, hello. And she grunted at me and said, "You're single, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, the nuns wouldn't have me." I'm kidding. And she says, "I know why you single women are so skinny." Yes. She says, "I know why you single women are so skinny. Because at the end of a long, hard day, you come home from work, you go to the refrigerator, you see what is in it, you get disgusted, and you go to bed." I said, "Yeah, that's true." She said, "We married women, at the end of a long, hard day, we come home, we go to the bed, we see what's in it, we get disgusted, and we go to the refrigerator." There is humor in that, yes? But there is also sadness. This is very common. I am unhappy with my life. My husband disgusts me. I have no children, so I have no joy. I have my job. I think I'm getting fulfillment in my job, but really I am unhappy and depressed because I don't know who I am. The biggest problem with cultures that move away from life is not that they don't know where they're going. Often people say America has lost its way, right? We have lost our direction. We have not lost our way, we have lost our address. We don't know where we are from. We don't know where we came from. We don't know that we belong to and come from God. And this is the biggest message I have for you today. If you want to help teach pro-life and help people understand the gift of life and turn away from abortion and turn away from euthanasia, right? Mercy killing. Turn away from destructive research on embryos, human embryos. Turn away from cloning. Turn away from in vitro fertilization, from pornography, from contraception, right? From sex outside of marriage, from divorce. If we wish to build a pro-life culture, we have to solve the problem of the human heart first. It does not work to only show people the unborn baby pictures. That is important, very important. My husband became a pro-life activist because when he was 12 years old, he saw the pictures of what the unborn baby looks like. And then he saw the pictures of what abortion looks like. And it changed him and convicted him. So I'm not saying that is not important. It is. But it is more important that we discover the disease, right? The disease in the human heart. And we root out that disease. Because now in America, people will say, "I know it's a baby. I know it has value. I don't care. I need an abortion because I need to be free. And my life is important. And the law says it is okay. So who are you to tell me I cannot?" And I have heard this same attitude here in India. I spoke with counselors yesterday here in India whose whole job is therapy, counseling, psychological counseling. And they tell me the women come and tell them this. The minds and the attitudes are changing and it is not in a good direction. And we need to heal them in their hearts. Let me tell you a little bit then first about the principles that are common to us. I know this says number 7. Usually when I give talks, I start with principle number 1 and then I end with principle number 10. Here I'm starting in the middle with you because you are already advanced. You're part of this movement, Jesus Youth Movement, Catholic seminarians and sisters, and so you are advanced from most of the audiences I speak to, so I start a little later. I will go back and cover the other ones, but first I want to start here with you. We have this idea, this notion of human rights. And you have this idea here in India too, right? Human rights. What is a human right? We call them inalienable rights. Some nations call it natural rights. It is the understanding that all human beings are owed a duty by others because you are valuable. I owe you a duty not to kill you. Does my accent is okay? You know what I'm saying? Yes, I owe you a duty not to kill you because you are valuable. I owe you a duty not to enslave you because you are valuable. I owe you a duty not to take away your property because you are valuable and you have a right to the property that you have earned or that has been given to you. Otherwise, if I take everything away from you, you will starve to death and die. You will not have the shelter that you need to protect yourself. And so, in the 1500s, A man named Suarez, Francisco Suarez, invented this notion of human rights. He was the first one to identify the notion of human rights in Western tradition. Because he noticed that he was from Spain. He was a Spanish Jesuit Catholic priest. And he noticed that the Spaniard conquistadors, the Spanish, were enslaving people and saying it was justified for the common good. And that even among their own people, they were hurting and harming innocent human beings. The government was harming innocent human beings on the grounds that it was okay if it would serve the common good. So there are poor people living by the river, but we need to build a road. And so the government would come and the soldiers would push the poor people out of their homes without any regard for their needs, so they could build their road for the common good. And what would happen to the poor? They would die. They have no fresh water anymore, nowhere to plant their fields, no way to live. They've lost their homes, they've lost everything. And the government would say, too bad. You must suffer. We sacrifice you for the common good. And so Francisco Suarez said, you cannot do that. He said, this is a tremendous violation of your duty as the government to care for the individual needs of the human people that make up your nation. You see, the very legitimacy of a government is based in the value of each of its citizens. If it does not regard you with value, then it has no legitimacy to govern over you. So he said, every human being has human rights. And it is your human rights and the need for it to be protected that gives government the authority to govern over you. Whether it is a monarchy, whether it is a democracy, an oligarchy, whatever form of government, the only way it gets its authority to govern over you, its power to govern over you, is if it recognizes your inalienable rights. Once it violates that rights, it loses its right to govern over you. It becomes an illegitimate government. It becomes a tyranny, and the people have a right to overthrow that government. And so he created this principle. We call it the principle of natural rights, or human rights, or fundamental rights. My nation calls it inalienable rights. Inalienable means the right cannot be separated from you. It is part of your nature. The government did not give you these rights. The government gave you other rights. It gives you the right to vote, the right to drive a car, the right to assemble. Okay? There are lots of rights the government gives you and can take away. It can take away the right to drive from you if you drink and drive and cause a big accident. It has the legitimacy to do that. It can take away the right to vote from a person if that person commits a grave crime and no longer can be trusted with the right to vote. It can take that away. It can refuse to allow the right to vote for a person who is only 4 years old, because you will not make good decisions, right, when you are 4. Okay? So it can do that. Those are government rights. They are known as extrinsic rights, rights that are outside of you, given to you by someone else and can be taken away. But an intrinsic right is a right that is a part of your nature, and the government cannot take it away. It is impossible. I owe you a duty because you are human, not because the government said so. And so what are those rights? He says every human being has fundamental rights which are yours by your nature and are not dependent on any outside source for validation. No government gives these rights. No government can take these rights away. And what are those rights? Life, liberty, and property. Sometimes you hear in the U.S. Declaration of Independence called the pursuit of happiness. But it is like a property right. Why these three? Why? Because life is necessary for you to be the person God created you to be. In order for you to be fulfilled as a human being, you need to be alive, right? I have to have a choice, so I need liberty. Liberty is necessary for my fulfillment as a human being, so liberty is also a human right. Property. Why property? Because without property, we would become unhealthy, we would die.
So the government has a responsibility to protect your property. Now, you can have too much property, where you get so much wealth that everyone else is poor and they are all starving to death. So your right to property is limited, but you do have a human right to a certain amount of property that is necessary for your sustenance, for you to stay alive. These we call 3 intrinsic rights, internal rights, inalienable rights. But we need another right, another principle. Because people will say abortion should be legal because the woman has an inalienable right to liberty. And you cannot take it away. And the government must respect it. So it must make abortion legal. Except for this principle, they are forgetting this one, and it is important. It's called the principle of the prioritization of rights. Those 3 rights have a hierarchy, a priority. They are ordered. And they are not ordered because I decided it or people voted on what order to put them in. It's what's called an objective ordering, not subjective. Subjective is your opinion, your feelings, right? Your beliefs. But objective is real because it is true in itself. And even if you don't believe it, it is still true. That is objective, right? And so there is an objective priority to these rights. How do I know? What is that objective priority? Which right is necessary for the very possibility of the other right's existence?
Life.
Yes, life. Exactly. Life is necessary for liberty. If there is a dead body on the ground, there is no concern about his liberty rights anymore. Okay? Where does he want to be buried? I don't know. Maybe we should ask him. Okay? He doesn't have any free choice anymore. He's dead. Okay? So life is necessary for liberty. It is necessary for owning property. When somebody is dead and he has all of his property, you're not going to bury him with all of his property. You're going to take it and give it to his heirs, right? His children or his grandchildren, because he doesn't own it anymore. Life is a necessary condition. Now, curious, look at this. Liberty and property are also prioritized. Which one is a necessary condition for the possibility of the other? Property or liberty? Can I be free if I do not own any property? If you are not free? No. What is your name? Yes. Say again.
Rajnikant.
You sit down. You stand up. You sit down. You give me all your belongings. I own you. You do as I say. If I own you, who owns your property?
You.
Right? I own all your property. In order for you to own anything, you must first own yourself. So, whenever there's a conflict between 2 rights, property and liberty, which one must win?
Liberty.
Liberty. It is not, let's vote. Who's stronger? Who's more powerful? Who can give the police officer more money? Yeah? That's all subjective and it is corrupt. The true answer is, which right is necessary for the other right's existence? Slavery is wrong, because yes, you have a right to property, but not at the violation of someone's liberty. A man's right to liberty is prioritized above his right to property. You see? So, let's say you live in a big house on top of a hill, and there is another house here, and you have your own driveway down to get to work, and he has his driveway down to get to work. And suddenly there is a storm, and a big tree falls over your driveway, and you cannot get to work. You are trapped in your home, enslaved. You can't get to work, you can't earn money, you're going to die, right? So you have no freedom. You need to use your neighbor's road, but he has a gate and says, it is my property. The government has the authority to tell your neighbor, no, you open your gate, you must allow your neighbor to use that road, because your right to liberty is more fundamental than your neighbor's right to property. Not more important. Those 3 rights are equally important. You need all 3 of them to actualize as a human person. But there is a priority when there is a conflict. The same thing is true with abortion. Why is abortion fundamentally wrong from a philosophical perspective? Reason number 1, because it places liberty above life. And that is a subjective choice based on vote, the authority of the government being abused, who is wealthier, who is bigger, who is more powerful, who can speak for themselves louder. It is all subjective. The objective ordering has been violated. In my nation, it is through Roe versus Wade, which is the Supreme Court decision in 1973 that determined that abortion could be legal through all 9 months. Your country legalized abortion up through 20 weeks of pregnancy and did the exact same thing. It placed the choice, the liberty of others, for certain reasons, above the life rights of the unborn child. Why do people do that? Why did people do that? Why did we make that mistake? People aren't stupid, and people are not fundamentally evil. Why did we do that? I want to take a little break now, and I want you to do this. I want you to break into small groups and talk with one another, maybe 2 or 3 if you need to, and answer this question. Why do you think that your culture and my culture have made this mistake? What caused us?
Just a basic rule, like what I really learned, that we need to have life, liberty, and then property. That's what really, a rule for life. That's all. Actually, I did not raise my hands. Actually, I put the hand for somebody else.
Do not sit in front of that man. Okay, so I want to hear what you thought. These gentlemen here in the front row were explaining to me that their answer to the question is, what drove us to legalize abortion and forget about this system of human rights is that people have concern for the woman that if she conceives a child and she will maybe be out of wedlock pregnancy, then she will have all the burden, the man will be free, and she will have all the burden of caring for the child. Okay? What's the problem with that situation? Is the problem that abortion is not legal, or is the problem that the man thinks he can be free of the circumstance? What is the real problem? So abortion is not just the fault of the woman, it is often the fault of the man. The vast majority of abortions in my country happen for the same reason they happen here. Because the women are abandoned by the men who impregnate them. And if those men would stand up and take responsibility and say, I will walk with you, this is my responsibility now, I will be committed to you and this child for life. I will support you, I will love you, and I will love this child, you would not have abortion. It's very true. It's a problem in the human heart that has crept into us to make us think that happiness is freedom from responsibility. Happiness is freedom from obligation. Happiness is a choice to do whatever I want to do. Any other reasons that you discussed that I should know about? Who else had a different reason than this? Yes.
Which thinks about women's rights as women looked at the womb as an instrument. Women are objectified. You know, the very reasons they give for women are tied down with this maternal role, and they don't have rights like men to move out and career.
Yes.
So it's the
feminine notion of what it means to be a woman. So it's not just the man's fault. It is also the woman's fault equally, because now women have bought the ideology that in order to be free, we also must be free from responsibility and obligation and commitment to pursue whatever it is we want to pursue. And that the baby will tie us down and prevent us from achieving career, from education, from pursuing my dreams, from having fun, right? Will cause me to have to be burdened by a child that now I have to diaper and feed and take care of, and give up some of my finances that I wanted to save for my own purposes. So you are identifying exactly the problem. That is the root. The root of abortion is not lack of understanding about fetal development. It is not lack of understanding of what abortion does. It is lack of understanding about what will make us happy. That the greatest job we have as Catholics, the greatest job we have as pro-life advocates, as pro-life apostles, is to teach human beings what real happiness is. If they do not understand what happiness is, they will not understand what true success means. They will think success means power. Success means having wealth and money. Success means my career. And then they will believe that quality of life, a good quality of life, comes from my ability to enjoy these things. And then they will believe that love means admiring me for the things I have, for my body, for my success. Admire me, desire me, that's love. And then they will believe that suffering is meaningless. There is no use to suffering. If I have to suffer, my life is diminished. My opportunities are diminished. And I will lose happiness. If we change the idea of happiness in the human heart, you elevate, you lift up how they understand success and quality of life and love and suffering. Let me show you what I mean. This is the biggest part of our pro-life movement, is to evangelize people on happiness, success, quality of life, love, suffering, and all these other terms. What is right and wrong? What makes us free? What is a human person? What are human rights? What is the common good? Those will fall into line when people are healthy in how they understand those other words at the top of the screen. But if they have narrow, shallow, closed ideas of happiness and these other words, they will have small ideas of personhood and freedom and human rights. Let me show you. Everyone wants to be happy, right? This is common to all of us. Every human being wishes to be happy, no matter what culture you live in, no matter when you are alive, no matter how old or young you are. We all desire happiness. From those who are handicapped, disabled in their minds, right? Full-bodied, able-bodied, we all desire happiness. You even have Indian states that create ministries on happiness because everybody desires it. And they want people to be happy. That's good. The problem is you cannot make people happy by a government program. Happiness comes from in your heart and here. And I am not criticizing India for this because we do the same thing in my country too. Let's have programs that people go to and they will be happy. And I know you have this as well. They have these things called laughing clubs in the United States where you go to a park and you laugh and you're supposed to go home happy, but they don't. They laugh. And then they go home and they're exhausted and they yell at their kids and they're depressed and angry just like they were before because the laughter doesn't solve the problems, right? And we have all these newspapers and magazines that tell us how to find happiness, what is real happiness. But none of them really get to the point. 2,400 years ago, an ancient Greek philosopher named Aristotle identified 4 different kinds of happiness. And many of your own Eastern philosophers, many in your own tradition, have identified the same levels of happiness because they are, these ideas of happiness are common to all of us. So anything you can think of that will make you happy will fit into one of these 4 categories. What are they? The first level of happiness is called physical pleasure and possessions. It's the kind of happiness that is tangible. You can see it, taste it, touch it, smell it, hear it, and it is physically good and satisfying. Okay? So you see the chicken marsala, and the naan, my children love your naan, right? The vegetable curry, and it looks so good. And what was that dessert you gave me last night? That weird thing in the cup? What was that? Huh? That thing. It was amazing, right? See, my husband was talking to somebody after this event. He's talking, and Dino puts it in his hand and he's talking. He eats something, he goes, "What is this thing? Oh, it's really good, right?" So we desire that. It's good. Those things taste good. Anything that fills up your body and makes you in your body satisfied, we call that happiness level 1. It is physical, biological. Okay? And it's good. Here's the important thing about our Catholic teaching. The church does not teach us, Jesus did not teach us that your physical body is bad. And you must purge yourself of physical desires. You must transcend the body. No. You are a human being. You are a body and a soul. That's what makes you unique from angels. Angels have only spirit. Animals have only body. You are unique. In all of creation, you have a physical body and a soul. And that is why when you die, you will get a new body. Because that's part of being human, right? And so the body is good. Level 1 is good. It's not a bad thing. I remember after I gave birth to Juliet, I could not sleep because she was awake all night. I was not experiencing happiness level 1, right? I was tired all the time. 2 o'clock in the morning she needs to eat. 4 o'clock in the morning she needs to eat. This was the first night Juliet slept all the way through the whole night. And I woke up and looked, we were both happy, and my husband took a picture. Happiness level 1, right there. Level 1 is a good thing. But the problem comes if you use it to excess. Excess. Too much. How can you use it to too much? If you make happiness level 1 your goal in life, your ultimate end, the purpose of your existence, you will end up in crisis. Because God did not intend that to be the purpose of your life. He intended it to be a means to a greater end. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean by that? Yes. He intended it to be a method you use to get to something higher. Not an end in itself. Not a goal in itself. If we live for level 1 as if it were our final goal, we will end up in crisis. Physical things after a while make us bored. Physical things make us restless and feel like we have low self-esteem. And they make us eventually feel as if we are living beneath our true potential. Why? Dogs don't do that. The dog is out there in the streets looking for food. He finds the food, he eats it, he is satisfied, he falls asleep. He is content. He wakes up, he wants more food. He doesn't wake up and think, how can I reach beyond the food I have eaten? How can I transcend my dogness? Right? He does not think that way. You do. The dog sits under the apple tree. He gets hit on the head by an apple. He eats it and falls asleep. Newton sits under the apple tree. He gets hit on the head by the apple, and he asks a question. Why did the apple fall instead of go up in the sky? Right? Human beings transcend our physical bodies to the point where even if Newton was hungry, he would not eat because he's so curious for that answer. Human beings need more than physical pleasure and possessions. So happiness level 2 is a little higher than level 1. It's a little more worthy of you than level 1. It's more worthy of your time and your effort than level 1. Why? Because it is deeper. It uses more of your talents and skills. It is longer lasting. And it affects more people beyond yourself. Happiness level 2 is called ego gratification. It's the kind of happiness that comes from feeling good, not in your body, but feeling good about who you are. Being proud of yourself. Self-esteem, right? And it is very good. And there are 4 ways you can get happiness level 2. You can achieve something. You can succeed at something. You are in school, you are getting ready to graduate, you get your degree, and now you can go to college, to university, right? And then you graduate again, and now you can get a good job. You're proud of yourself, you have achieved it, and that's a good feeling. That's level 2. A second way you can get level 2 is by being better than somebody else. Comparing yourself, and we do this all the time, right? As much as we wish we didn't, we do it, it's easy. I'm at Mass, and Father's giving a great sermon, and I'm looking down at the sari that I bought for 300 rupees. And the lady over there, this is not a sari, what is this called? Sudhidar. Thank you. That. I look at the lady there, that one's prettier than mine. Oh, sorry, Jesus. Right? We do it all the time, we catch ourselves, right? Or these gentlemen over here, right? They're out playing sports. They play basketball, right? And one guy keeps getting all the shots. Oh, boom, boom, boom. And this guy's like, I'm not as good as he is. And the other gentlemen say to him, what does this matter in the whole order of salvation? It is a basketball game. Oh yeah, okay, I forget. We forget, right? We are tempted to care about being better than others, more popular, more powerful. We're tempted by that, to be better. The third way you can get an ego gratification is by popularity, being respected. being admired, and being liked. And this is a huge attraction for women to abort their babies. I will lose the respect of my family. I will lose my friends. I will lose people's admiration. They will judge me. I will have a stigma on me. We don't want that. We fear that. Where does that come from? Level 2 becomes an end in our life instead of a means to a greater end. And the fourth way we can get level 2 is by power, control. We want to have authority over other people. You want to get a good job. Now you're working, but you have a boss. And he's mean, he's angry, he's always telling you you're not good enough. And you think, I'm going to have your job someday. And then you get promoted. Now you get to be mean to everybody else, right? No, I'm just kidding. Right? But you have authority over others. And that gives you a sense of pride. All right, so that's happiness level 2, ego gratification. Now here is my point. Imagine a culture where everyone is living for level 1 and level 2 as if it were the most important. As if it were your identity, what gives life its value and its meaning. No wonder men and women seek abortion, because it threatens my achievement, my pleasures, my wealth, my physical goods, my physical health. It threatens my esteem, my respect, my admiration. It threatens my control, my power over others. It threatens my ability to be better than you and to be competitive. It threatens my achievements. Most people choose abortion out of fear of losing level 1 and level 2. Not all abortions are for that reason. Some are for other reasons, but the vast majority are for those reasons. How do we solve that problem? Use the baby carrier without Juliet falling on the floor. That was a good achievement, and I was proud. That's okay. But if we live for level 2 as the most important, we will become angry when we don't get what we want. Have you ever known anybody who lives for level 2 and they have an angry personality when they don't win? Have you ever known anybody like that? Maybe a small child who thinks the competition is the most important and they lose and they throw down the cards of the game. Oh, you cheated! They're so angry. You're like, it's just a game. But they get angry. Jealous. We become jealous of other people who are better than us. Contemptuous of people who are less than we are. Contempt means to believe you are less valuable than I am. They always must prove that they are better than you. Otherwise, they lose their self-identity. Anxiety. Have you ever been awake at night, very nervous about how you are going to perform on the exam tomorrow? And you cannot sleep? That comes from level 2. And have peace in the Lord. But what if I fail? Okay, Jesus. But what if I fail? You cannot sleep. Suspicion. Level 2, when we overemphasize level 2, we become suspicious of our friends, of our neighbors, of our family, thinking that they are trying to steal our glory, thinking that they are trying to undermine our good, that they are trying to make fun of us, that they have bad intentions. We think they are judging us all the time, but really, we are judging them. I always tell this to people who tell me, you pro-lifers, you judge women. You judge them as evil. You judge them as unable to provide for their own desires and needs. You think that the women are incapable of having choice. And I say to them, oh, that is interesting because you just judged me. You think that is what I believe, but it is not what I believe about women. Gosh, right? And so they'll run out to the street, look for lady. Hurry up, I want my badge. Thank you. Well, that is not level 3. It is doing level 3 action for a level 2 reason, because I want the award. Okay? Level 3 is when you do good for others because you desire their good. You don't want the old lady to get hurt by a tuk-tuk. Right? So that is what motivates it. And there are different ways you can get level 3. Okay? There's a nurse doing good. But human beings desire truth. We want to know the truth so we can teach the truth to others so that we can live healthy lives. We seek love. We want love. Because then when we have love, we are fulfilled. We seek justice, fairness for people. That comes from level 3. When you want justice for another human being, that comes from your desire for the good. We seek beauty. Right? We want to create art and music in the world that is beautiful so that it inspires other people to goodness. That comes from level 3. Home. We want to create a home where people feel welcome and loved, like your hospitality here in India is so wonderful. We've been treated so well. I feel at home in India. I don't want to go back to my country because I feel at home here now, but I know I must go. My boss would be very angry if I did not come back. But we desire, those are called the 5 transcendentals. 5 goods above and beyond your physical body. They transcend the body. Truth, love, justice, beauty, and home. Those are the 5 ways that human beings desire to do a good beyond themselves for others. And it is very, very good. But there is a problem with level 3. You don't just want some truth, some love, some justice, some beauty. You desire absolute truth, unconditional love, perfect justice, flawless beauty, and eternal home. Human beings have a God-shaped hole in our hearts that makes us long for these things, desire these things perfectly. And when we don't get it perfectly, we are frustrated. Who has ever been in love? Who has been in love, romantic love? Raise your hand. Nobody. Nobody's ever been in love with somebody else before. Yes, you've been in love. And what, because you're married?
Yeah, he's my husband.
Oh, good, I'm glad you're in love with me. Okay, let's go. So, let me ask you this question. Have you ever been in love with somebody? I know in America, our notion, our idea of love is different from, a little different from your idea. We think that love is this, I know you have this also here sometimes too. Human nature is human nature, but we really stress feeling. You know, oh, I'm in love, and my hair is blowing every time you come. And you make my heart go, and we are going to kick off our shoes and go dancing in the streets, right? And then my whole life is just beautiful because of you, and you are my God. Uh-oh. That's the problem with love. We desire romance, and I see this in your Bollywood movies. Before we came here, we watched a lot of Bollywood movies so we could understand your culture, and it's not your culture. Bollywood, you know. But I could see it in the movies, that desire for the romance, and she sees his eyes, and he sees her eyes, and suddenly there are 500 people singing and dancing. Where did they come from? I don't know. And they all know the same song. And they all know the same moves. How do they do this? But it's that idea. You think that your beloved will fill you perfectly and make me totally happy forever and ever, amen, happily ever after. No. But then you discover he has a flaw. Yes? Yeah. He has a flaw, you know. She is not always perfect. Right? Sometimes you are rude. Sometimes you are gross. Do you have that word?
Yes.
What's that word for gross? Disgusting. Sometimes you are selfish. Sometimes you forgot my birthday. Right? Sometimes you are boring. Sometimes you are not attractive anymore. The American women get married, they get big and fat. And so, our expectation for perfect love and romance is dashed, frustrated. Why? Because we placed our desire for perfect love in another human being. We place our desire for perfect justice in the government, but it does not always deliver perfect justice. Sometimes it is corrupt. Often it is corrupt. We place our desire for perfect beauty in art and music, but after a while, the music, as beautiful as it is, becomes boring. Noise, too much noise, I need the quiet. We place our desire for perfect home in our families. But sometimes you go home for Christmas holiday and your family's fighting. Or your father is not there. Or your mother has died. We cannot create perfect home, eternal home in this world. And so we have dashed expectations. What do? Happiness level 4. Happiness level 4 is accepting God's unconditional love and mercy. It is believing that my desire for perfect, absolute, unconditional, eternal truth, love, justice, beauty, and home can be fulfilled. But not by you, and not by me. It can only be fulfilled by someone who is perfect, absolute, infinite, truth, love, justice, beauty, and home. And that is, the word we use is God. That is who God is. Only He can fulfill that desire, right? Accepting God's love, unconditional love and mercy. I need to have that word in there, I missed it. Accepting God's unconditional love and mercy. That is happiness level 4. And you know we have many stories to show this in our Catholic faith, that this is God and this is what He can do for you. The prodigal son, God's unconditional love and His unconditional mercy is in this story. Also it is shown in the story of the washing of the feet. When Jesus washed the feet of His disciples, He showed my mercy and love has no conditions, no boundaries. Now you know that in ancient Jewish tradition, you do not wash another human being's feet. The foot was the lowest part of the body, right? It would degrade a human being. It was beneath the dignity of a human being to wash another person's foot. You could not even force a servant to wash your feet. But you could force a slave. Someone who was enslaved and purchased from another country by war or by kidnapping, right? You could force them because they didn't deserve to be treated with value and dignity. And God, He has just revealed Himself to be the Son of God. He is putting Himself in the place of a slave that deserves no dignity and worth. No wonder they reacted this way. Do you see the man in the top left corner holding his head? They understand what Jesus is doing. Peter, in America, we do not like broccoli. And so we call this the broccoli Peter. He looks like someone is forcing him to eat broccoli. He is not happy because he knows Jesus is the Son of God. Right? But he is allowing God to do this because Jesus says this is what heaven is, accepting my unconditional. There is no condition to my love, no boundaries. I will do anything for you, even wash your feet. And so we have this beautiful vision of happiness. Now, here's my point, and then we will take another break and we'll have a snack for you. Yes? Okay. Here's my point. If a human being is living for happiness, level 1 and level 2, we discussed already that they will define success, right? Success as achievement, what you have, what you can do. And an unborn child will be seen as a threat. They will view quality of life as being able to enjoy these things. And if you take them away from me, I will not be able to enjoy life anymore. They will see love in terms of admire me, love me, give me things. Level 1, give me things. Right? You take away, I am no longer, you do not love me anymore. And suffering only has meaning in level 1. Actually, suffering has no meaning in level 1. But it does have meaning in level 2 if it makes me stronger, more powerful, more admired by people. Oh, you have suffered so much. You are a wonderful person. Oh, you are great. Please give me your autograph. Then suffering has meaning. But if suffering makes me weaker, right, more dependent on others, then my suffering has no meaning, and it is unworthy. Now, do you see, if you can change in someone's mind and heart how they understand happiness, you can change how they understand all these words. A person who is truly living for level 3 and level 4 would never say that an unborn child will threaten my opportunity for success. If they are really living for level 3 and level 4, they would recognize, oh, an opportunity for greater success. Because I am more successful when I am able to pour myself out for your needs. I am more successful when I surrender to God's will in my life. And so the unborn child is seen as an opportunity, not a problem. In level 1 and 2, that child is seen as a problem, a threat. In level 3 and 4, he is seen as an opportunity, a mystery, and a good. Yes, there will be suffering. Yes, there will be challenges. Yes, when I was pregnant with my first child in my 40s, I was worried. No, I could die. There are a lot of complications in childbirth when you are older. The child may be born with Down syndrome. That will be difficult. It will require much from me. But I knew level 3 and level 4 means that if I say no to this opportunity to love, I will be very unhappy. To sacrifice level 3 and level 4 for level 1 and level 2 is not an option for me. That's what we need to do in the hearts of other men and women. Make it so that they look at that and say, that is not an option for me. That will not lead to happiness or success or quality of life. A person in level 3 and level 4 would never say, oh, the child will be born with a disability. He will have low quality of life. No. The person in level 3 and level 4 would say, I will help this child to have a high quality of life by loving him, welcoming him, treating him with justice, and teaching him about God. A person in level 3 and level 4 would never say, if I have this baby, I will lose respect and admiration and love of others around me, because they would recognize if people stop loving me because I am pregnant, because I have given birth to this child, their love was not real. It was not true. A person in level 3 and level 4 would say, if I'm going to suffer because of this child, it is worth it. So what I want to do now is have you break for a little while. We have a snack for you, and I want you to take about a 15-minute break until, we do the snack at 3:45. Take about a 10-minute break to answer this one question, and then at 3:45. 3:50. Okay, at 3:50, we will give you snacks. So take now some time between the next 10 minutes to answer this question in your small group, okay? But I want you... Yes, I'm going to ask you. I want you to answer this question, okay? Where in your culture, here in India, do you see happiness level 1 and level 2 taking over people's lives? Where do you see it? And how is it having a negative effect in not just abortion, but in the way people understand sexuality, in their view of gender, in their view of their understanding of pornography, how they understand contraception, all these moral issues. Where do you see level 1 and level 2 being pushed on people in your culture? Give actual examples. And then, how is that affecting the way people in India view the moral issues that we care about in our faith? So take about 10 minutes to discuss that, and then we'll have a break.
India is said to be second after US. It is India. The reason there are surveys. And rape can be the cause of high bonds. There was also a survey conducted and the result was like that. And politics itself is not bad, but now currently politics is very much because why they do? Because they want power. Power is the basic need. So they think power can gratify or bring happiness. Maybe it is the same with any political parties, or even it is coming into our own religious circles also. Power. And next thing we discussed was the high need for money and all the advertisement we see in India, anywhere. That's the kind of fantasy they are bringing into the ads that we have in India. Or in everything there is a happiness. If you eat this one or if you drink this one, there is happiness. Or when they when they do ads for any alcoholic items, directly it's not allowed in India to have advertisement on alcoholics, I think so. So they come up with some music videos which is the same name of this same alcoholic items. How about 2000? I have seen some articles. So I was thinking why these people, they are also producing alcohol, they are also producing music. Then later on I understood they are indirectly marketing for their products. So maybe behind all advertisement we see, they are indirectly showing that it is bringing happiness, but it doesn't bring happiness. And behind any product, in India they bring family because family is prevalent. So they bring family happiness in many of the things. For one example, I can tell there is one thing, kitchen equipment. It is the same with any advertisement. They say happiness bring, this is bringing, this product is, or anything brings happiness. So why they do it? Because they need money. Money is the reason behind this advertisements or money. So and then we were talking about drug abuse and drug distribution. So when people outside they drink, they take a lot of drugs in order to maybe kind of get out of their deeps or their deep pain. So for many of them are taking, I have also seen people taking drinks or drugs. For sometimes they will be out of everything. They will be, I have seen people when they take this ganja, I don't know how it's called in English. It's also medicine, it's widely used in the US also. Marijuana, that's all. So when they take it, they quite a laugh for several hours. They'll simply laugh. They'll eat 2, 3, 4 plates of food and still they feel hungry. So they're just getting out of their mind and maybe they are indirectly told that this is happiness. And those who provide these things also is looking for money. That's why they simply provide. They know what is the side effects of the drug. But now chemical drugs are available very much. Children or our youngsters are very much misusing it. Why they provide it? Because they need money. And why they buy it? Because they need a kind of happiness which they think the real happiness is. But once that kick is over, then they are again back in the same situation. Same people are in front of them, same issues are in front of them. But for a kind of hours, maybe 1 or 3, maybe according to each drug it prefers, so they are out of it. So this is one thing. And all of it is affecting, the second question if you answer, all of it is affecting negatively our culture. Drugs, when we misuse, it is affecting our youngsters and our people. Or when we highly market for products, maybe they are getting money, but it is affecting our culture or integrity. Or pornography or rape, it is pornography or rape, when they do, it is affecting our family culture, or it is taking away our that basic tradition of family, or politics, it is taking our ethics. So power is enough. Indirectly they are telling all of us that just have power, then you will be happy. So this is things we discussed.
Say again? To give up doing the good? Because you become so frustrated with what has happened that you no longer seek to do the good. And you say, human nature is just so corrupt And we are losing everything, and we are losing control, and they are oppressing us, and they are taking away our freedoms. And so I no longer wish to do good in this culture. And many Americans have fallen into that crisis, right? Abortion is so big in our country, and pornography, and homosexuality, and fornication, and divorce, and contraception is so big that human beings are all corrupt. And so many Catholics say, I give up on human nature, and I will stay. My solution is I stay at home with my children. They will not get me, right? They will not get me. I will protect myself and say my rosary in my home and protect my children and stay here and, pardon this language, to hell with the rest of humanity. They are going to go to hell. Their problem. I protect myself. That is crisis level 3. Because it is trusting in ourselves above God. It forgets to say, God sees all of this, and He is allowing the persecution. He could stop the persecution in a moment if He wished, just as He could have prevented the death of His Son on a cross. But He allowed it because He respects human freedom. Number 1. He respects human freedom. Even the human freedom of people who are opposed to Him. Why does God not squish or stamp out the people who are evil and oppressing the people of God? Why does He not stop them with force? Because to do so would take away human freedom. And He loves all humans, even those who do not truly know Him. He loves them as much as He loves us. So He will not stamp out or kill the evil people. That is not God's way. Jesus came, the New Testament shows a correction of the Old Testament, right? A fulfillment of the Old Testament. That God loves all humans, and He will not kill people who are opposed to Him because He loves them, they are His children. And so He's not going to squish them because He loves and respects our human freedom. Freedom is the only way we can get to God. Those mistaken, wayward children of God who are false in their beliefs can never get to Him if He takes away their freedom. That is what they need. They just need to be converted, right? To freely convert. Second reason why God will not stamp them out is because what would happen if we all know that if we turn against Him, He will stamp us out? What will happen? That is right. We will serve God out of fear, not out of love. We will serve Him because we are afraid of being stamped out, not because we have genuine compassion and care for others. So we must be very careful in the face of persecution that is coming in India, not to grow frustrated, disappointed, and cynical. Cynical. Am I pronouncing that okay for you?
Yes.
Cynical, right? About the world. Do not give up and retreat into your own homes. You have to go out into the world and allow God to be God, regardless of what happens to us. Another question that came up was, is there a crisis in level 4? Right? Crisis level 1, boredom, low self-esteem. Crisis level 2, jealousy, anger, contempt, suspicion, anxiety, right? Aggression. Crisis level 3, disappointment, frustration, cynicism, despair. Is there a crisis in level 4? Yes, there is a crisis. It is believing 2 things. Number 1, that I am so dirty, right? So foul, so filled with sin, that God would never want to come to me. That God would never come to me because I am defiled. And that is a crisis, and it is wrong because it is judging that God is not perfect. And another crisis is believing that I have the power to get to God by myself. That I do not need His help. I can get to God all by myself, by my own holiness. But really that is level 2. Right? That I think I am powerful enough to get to God on my own. It's in Phoenix, Arizona, where it is as hot as India. Not quite.
And she knows she is a princess. Every little girl knows she is a princess. Do you have to teach little girls that they are princesses, or do they just know it? They just kind of know that, right? How do they know that? Because God has written it in her heart. Because she is a princess. God is her father. God is a king. That makes her a princess, not a Disney princess. I teach my daughters this. You are not like the Disney princesses, like Cinderella, Snow White, Rapunzel. You are not like the Disney princesses. They are pretend. Cartoons, no life. You are a real princess. Because your father is real and he is the greatest king of all. And my daughters know they are princesses. But even girls who do not have a mother like me to teach them that, they know they are princesses. They all want to dress like princesses. They all want the beautiful hair like the princesses, right? They all want the tiaras in their hair. Girls know that. Susanna, she just knows she is a princess. So she dressed up. One day I was visiting them in Phoenix. And Susanna was playing in the bedroom, and she did not know I was watching her from another room. And she was sitting on the bed, dressed up like this, with a beautiful dress, and her hair all done up, and she put makeup on her face. It was a big mess, but she thought it was beautiful. And her mother's high-heel shoes on her feet, and she had a scarf, and she was stroking the scarf, and saying, I am the princess, and you are the prince, and you have to marry me. And that is when I noticed that sitting in the corner of the room was my nephew, and he was clutching a toy fire engine to his chest. There he is. His name is Aaron, and he is also 4 years old. He is her cousin. And he said to her, I don't want to marry you. And she said, I am the princess. You have to marry me. And he said, I don't like marrying you. Because he knows, he's played this game before. He knows what happens when you marry Susanna. You get bossed around a lot. Right? And she says, don't you know that if you don't get married, you cannot ever grow up? Well, that is a very un-American concept, but it is good. And he thinks about that for a minute. He does not want to have to play this game. So he says, well, I can't marry you right now because I have to figure out how this truck works first. So Susanna, wanting to be the princess who gets married and is not rejected, wanting to be unconditionally loved, Susanna gets up off the bed and she walks over to Erin and she puts her fists on her hips and she shakes her head and she says, oh, for heaven's sake, give me that truck. I will show you how it works. And she bends over to take it, and he puts the truck up to stop her, and she bonks her head on the truck, and she runs off crying, and he starts screaming, and I am thinking this marriage is not going to last very long. What was the problem? Was this the problem? Susanna is expecting unconditional love, and she should never expect that because it does not exist. And so she should purge herself of that desire and get rid of the desire and expect that there is no such thing. Is that the problem? No. The problem is that Susanna's desire for unconditional love is real, but she was trying to fulfill it by a human source that can never fulfill that desire. Only God can do that. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Oh, there you go. All right, I want to move on to more philosophy, because here is now a new problem. The pro-abortion movement is very clever, and they know that our movement is working very hard to change the mentality of human beings, so they will not be selfish. The abortion movement survives when people are selfish. Right? When they think about level 1 and level 2. And so they promote that as values, as good, as courageous. You are courageous and good and even holy when you live for yourself above your children. That's what God wants you to do. And in the United States, there are pastors, right? Christian ministers who will bless the abortion clinics. Yes. And say it is a holy thing and call it holy ground, because now women can go in and truly fulfill who they are, the nature that God meant them to be, because our country now allows them to free themselves from things that keep them from pursuing their God-given call. And they call abortion a sacrament. And so the abortion movement knows that they survive when people believe selfish. And they see the pro-life movement doing great work to call people back to holiness, to true holiness. So they must fool people in another way. They say, don't worry, it's not a person anyway. You've heard this argument, yes? It's not a person anyway, it's not a human being. It's just a clump of tissue. Do you know the studies in America show, and I am sure this would be true here in India as well, the vast majority of women who get abortions ask this question before they have the abortion. They ask the doctor, is it a baby? Because deep in their heart they know it is a baby, but they want to hear someone tell them, no, it's okay. It's not a baby. It's just a glob of cells. It's just tissue. It won't become a baby till much later. You are fine. So we need to be prepared to answer this question. Is the unborn child a human person? In order to answer that well, we have to make sure we teach people the difference between objective truth and subjective truth. We went through this before, and these are some of the examples we give to students in 9th standard, 10th standard, 11th, 12th standard to help them understand this. There is such a thing as objective truth. Reality is not just subjective. That's what the abortion movement is teaching. Their whole message is truth is whatever you want it to be. And your truth may be different from your truth, and that's okay. We tolerate and respect each other. And you cannot judge his truth and you cannot judge her truth because she is different with a different background. All reality is subjective. And we say, really? Have you ever studied pi? You know this symbol from mathematics, right? It is the circumference of a circle divided by its diameter. And it has a really inconvenient decimal point equivalent. 3.14159265, and it goes on forever. In the late 1800s, in my country, the Indiana State Legislature was debating a law that would require that all teachers would round pi to a nice even 3.2. Much easier. Fortunately, there was a mathematician in the audience, sitting in the chamber of the legislature, and he raised himself and said, you cannot do this. There would be devastation. What happens if you use that number in your calculations when you are an engineer and you are building a building? Your building will collapse. Right? Bridges will collapse. Wheels will have a space left out of its rim. It is an objective number, and you can believe differently, you can feel differently, you can desire differently, but you cannot change pi. It is what it is because it is. Here's another example. This is potassium cyanide. If I have a headache, and you want to do good for me, and you look in your medicine chest, but there is no aspirin, no Tylenol, right? But there is potassium cyanide. Why would you have cyanide? I don't know, but maybe you have it hanging around. And you take it from your closet and you say, oh, I really like Camille, and I want to help her with her headache. So I really believe that this will help her. I have a strong faith, and I will pray over this bottle. Lord, change this and make it heal Camille's headache. And you give it to me and I take it with water. What will happen? I will die. Because potassium cyanide is objectively, authentically deadly. Doesn't matter what your belief is, what your opinion is, your truth is different from his truth, it will kill me all the same. That's objective truth, right? In the same way, there is objective truth about what the unborn child is.
So I'm going to share with you the other principles that I talked about. We did 7, 8, 9. We didn't do 10. We don't need 10 today. But we will go through principles 1 through 6 now. And the first 3 principles are, how do you know what truth is? How do you know objective truth? Whose truth is better than someone else's truth? These principles are the most basic principles of all logic. Without believing in these, we cannot be rational. We cannot be logical. We will become an irrational, illogical society. These principles transcend cultures. They do not just apply in Western cultures. They apply here as well. They do not just apply today. They applied 10,000 years ago. And 100 million years from now, they will still be true. They are what we call universal principles, because they are objective. The first one is called the principle of non-contradiction. What is a contradiction? What is a contradiction?
They cannot be at the same time be.
That's right. A contradiction is when you say A and B. Right? A and B are different, right? But they are. You can have A be B at the same time, at the same place, in the same respect. That is a contradiction. So the principle of non-contradiction says something cannot be X and not X at the same time, at the same place, in the same respect. That means in the same substance, in the same body. It is impossible. So often, abortion proponents will say, it's a baby if you want it to be, but not if you don't want it to be. And you must point out to students, to young people, that is a violation of the principle of non-contradiction and completely illogical. And we cannot have our law based in things that are illogical, because then anything goes. It cannot be a baby and not a baby at the same time, at the same place, the same body. Queen Elizabeth cannot be alive and dead at the same time. Those are mutually exclusive conditions. You cannot have a square that is also a circle at the same time and same place, because a circle has conditions that exclude the conditions of square. A square has 4 intrinsic right angles. A circle has no intrinsic right angles. So you cannot have a square circle. It is impossible. You cannot have a baby, not baby. Impossible. If you accept contradictions and you say they are okay, then all contradictions must apply. Rape is bad, but it's also good. So we shouldn't have a law on that. People should decide for themselves. Who are you to tell a man what to do with his body? It's his body. So maybe his truth is different from yours. You cannot have laws against slavery, because he may be a slave for you, but he's not a slave for me. It's not bad, it may be bad for you, it's not bad for me. So our truth is different. So we cannot have a law on slavery, we cannot have a law on murder, we cannot have a law on child abuse, we cannot have laws against kidnapping, because it's good for you, but it's bad for me at the same time. So laws have no business deciding, you decide. So now there are no laws. So the principle, we have to move beyond this. How do we know whether the unborn is a human being or not? This is one of the first ways to do it. It's called the principle of reasonable public corroboration. What does that mean? It means that the best definition of something is the one that has evidence, the most evidence that other people can verify, that other people can see. Okay? And another way of stating this is arbitrarily asserted, arbitrarily denied. What does that mean? To be arbitrary means to just say it of your own opinion or your own whim. So you cannot just say arbitrarily, it's a baby. Why? Because I feel like it is. I just know it is. Because someone else will arbitrarily say, okay, but it's not a baby. Why? Because I feel like it isn't. It's arbitrary. You must have objective proof that an unborn child is a human being. And we do have objective proof. In the 1970s, there was a French geneticist, right, a genetics scientist, and he used a DNA sequencer to discover the full human genetic code is present
in an unborn child at the moment of fertilization. At the moment that the sperm fuses with the egg. At that moment, you have a complete new genetic code. Now here's why this is important. Because they say that the unborn child is part of the woman's body. Your toenail cell is part of your body because it contains your human genetic code. Right? Your tongue taste bud is part of your body because it contains your human genetic code. But the unborn baby at the moment of fertilization has a new, different, unique, unrepeatable human genetic code. It is not the mother's and it is not the father's. It is completely different. And so, biologically, we have to say, this being is a being, right? A being means it is living, it is alive. No one denies that it is alive. It is metabolizing. It is taking in energy and letting out waste. Even at that single cell stage, it is already beginning to divide and metabolize. So we say it is a being of human origin. It comes from humans, right? A being of human origin, and it is unique. It is a unique human being. That is a biological fact that other people of reasonable intelligence can corroborate, can also see. And if you don't believe Dr. Jerome Lejeune, you can create your own DNA sequencer and you would discover the same reality, the same truth. Okay? It is an objective fact. So today, most medical textbooks do not deny when human life begins. That is not the argument anymore, because to do so is illogical and you look silly. So they admit that a human being begins at fertilization. So the pro-abortion movement knows this now. And when they are in serious debate and they are challenged, they change their argument. They say, oh, it's a human being, but it is not a human person. Have you heard this argument before? It's not a human person. It's a human being, but it's not a human person. They separate human being from human person. How and why do they do that? What does a human person mean? Why is it different from a human being? How is that different? Does anybody know what that word personhood means that's different from human being?
Based on the human rights?
Yes, exactly. The word personhood comes from your moral worth and your legal protectability. It comes from the rights that you have. And so the word person is used to describe your worth, your value as a human being, and the fact that the law, the government, has a duty to protect you under the law. That's what the word person means. A human being is just the biological description of who you are. You're a metabolizing being of human origin. That's biological. Personhood describes your full person, right? Your full reality. How do you know? Is it just subjective? Because the pro-abortion movement says yes, it is subjective. A human person is whoever the government says is a human person. Or whoever people vote on who is a human person. We get to decide who is a human person. Well, human beings have done that in the past, and we know today that it was a grave mistake. When are some examples that we have separated human personhood from human being? Give me some examples of when cultures and civilizations have done this. Hitler, Nazi Germany, right? The Jewish human being is not a person. When else? African slavery in England and in America, right? Because we said he is a human being, but he is not a human person. No moral value because of the color of his skin. When else did we do this? Now with abortion. Yes. Yes. And when
that that was wrong. Why? Because women and Africans and Jewish people, they have as much moral worth as we do for a specific reason. They were made in the image and likeness of God. But now we are making the same mistake. So we need to teach this principle. This principle number 3, the principle of most complete explanation. The best explanation of what something is, the best definition, is one that takes into consideration all the data, all of the information about the thing you are trying to define. If you only look at some of the information, you will have an incomplete definition. And that's what we did with Africans. Oh, you have a different skin color. You are not a person. But that was only looking at one part of the data, the information, the color of your skin. We did not look at the deeper information we have about people. And the same thing with the Jews and with women and with others who have been discriminated against. Okay? Let me give you an example of what I mean. Tell me, what is this vegetable? Capsicum. How did you know it was a capsicum? You used information, right? Information that is available to you. It looks like a capsicum. In your past, you have seen them before. We call this a pepper, right? I'm going to throw this. Some gentleman must catch it. There. What is it? Capsicum. Can you break it apart and share it with your friends? Go ahead, break it. You're not strong enough. What is wrong? It is just a capsicum. It is plastic. I fooled you. There was some information you were missing. If you are missing information about something, you do not fully know what it is. Very good. Now I'm going to give you more information. More information. So what is this fruit? Apple. It is an apple, okay? It is an apple. And you know it is an apple now because you have more information. It looks like an apple, right? And I have also told you it is an apple. So you act on the authority of me now that it is an apple. Very good. Somebody needs to be very good at catching. Go. Do you find it? Okay. Is it an apple? Yes. Can you please scratch into it with your finger now? You are not strong enough for the apple. What is it? It is plastic. I fooled you again. Yes. So now you know something else. You can be deceived. And that is what is happening. Men and women are allowing themselves to be deceived by others telling you it is not a person. Okay? If you want to know what something is, you cannot just listen to what the voices are telling you. And you cannot just look at it and say, it doesn't look like a baby, so it is not a baby. A person is much more than what we look like, and much more than what other people decide about us. How do you know what you are? The best explanation accounts for the most data. What is all the information we know about human beings? What is the deepest part of who we are? You cannot define a human being by saying, oh, a human being has arms and legs, and has eyeballs, and can walk, and has a certain IQ level, right? Certain intelligence level, and certain athletic abilities, because not all human beings have that. Some human beings have no arms and no legs. I know one of them. Nick Vujicic, right? You have heard of him? He's from Australia. His mother took thalidomide when he was a baby because in those days they used it for morning sickness when the mother has nausea from pregnancy. And they did not know that thalidomide is very dangerous to the developing baby. And he was born without any arms and any legs. And would we say he is not a person? Nick Vujicic is experiencing the fullness of human beings because he has love, and he has faith, and he has hope, and he has joy, and he has compassion, and he knows how to be generous and to care and to really listen, and he is creative, and he is humorous. Have you seen his videos on YouTube? Right? Where he can play soccer, he bounces around and bonks it with his head, right? He even swims, and he has humor with who he is. person. It is not your biology. The pro-abortion movement uses these arguments. It is not a human person, the unborn child, when it is prior to 20 weeks, right? Because it is dependent on the mother. How many of you have a mother? How many of you depend on your mother? Oh, you don't depend on her at all? Do you need her nurturing? Do you need her love? Do you need her advice? Do you need her wisdom? Do you need her care? Do you need her listening ear? We all depend on our mothers for our existence, right? We depend on Mary, our mother, right? In our Catholic faith. And even if you look even earlier than that, really, when do we become technically independent of our mothers? Elizabeth, my 6-year-old daughter, is not independent of me. If I left her at home for 2 months to fend for herself, I would come back and she would be starved to death. She needs my help. So dependency and independence do not make the difference between whether you are a person or not a person. We are all dependent on one another for survival. You are dependent on other human beings who provide you with fruits and vegetables and meats to eat. Right? You are dependent on the doctor for your health care. You are dependent on the police, the government, to protect you from people who will come in and overtake you. You are dependent on your neighbor not to be so angry at you that he will kill you. Right? We depend on one another all the time. So it cannot be independence that makes us a person, for none of us are completely independent of one another. So then the pro-abortion movement will say, oh, what makes you a human person is when you have a certain IQ. You have to reach a certain IQ. And I say, why at that level? Why not this level? Or why not this level? And what about when we get so high that you no longer qualify because you are not intelligent enough? To say you must be a certain IQ is completely subjective. There is nothing objective about that definition. Sometimes they will say, their argument is, you are not a human person if you do not have a social identity. The unborn baby has no name, no social security number, or what would you call it, no government ID number. Right? Do you get a government ID number? Yeah. Yeah. I'm learning, it's pretty good. This is good. I will teach my children these words. And they will say, what? Okay? You get the same. They argue, it's the stupidest argument in the world. They say because the unborn baby does not have a social identity, a government ID number, or a name, it is not a human person. And I say to them, okay, let's just give it a name and a number, and then it will be a person. Right? And what about those people who live in the rainforests, who are primitive cultures, and we all care so much to protect them? They have no social identification card. Or they're not human persons, why do you care so much about them? What about the poor that live in the streets of India, who are abandoned? They have no personhood, really? And of course, many think that. Many think that way. Yeah? Because they have no name. Do you know that some people do not choose a name for their children when they are born? For maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So they can sort of think about it. Is that child not a person during the time he has no name? What is it about a name that suddenly gives you value and moral worth and legal protectability? It is illogical. It is silly. So, what do we do? How do we know when you are a human person? What is all the data about a human being? Yes, you have a certain biology. You have to have a human DNA to be a human person. Okay? But beyond that, how do you define us? What is the fullest information we have about human beings? You tell me. What is the ultimate goal of the human being? What is our final purpose? Our ultimate end? What? What is it? Created in His image and likeness. We find fulfillment, our ultimate end, when we accept the unconditional love of God and love Him back, right? That is the fullness of data about the human person. What makes us human persons is that we're different from dogs and pigs and chimpanzees. We can recognize God. We can accept his unconditional love, and we can learn to act in his image with care and compassion, generosity, creativity, care, friendship, help, service, self-sacrificial love, surrender to others. We can do that. That's what makes us fully human persons. That's where you get your value from. Not your arms. Your arms do not give you value. Your legs. I chop off your legs, you're still a human person. Not your IQ. You're not as smart or intelligent as me. You are still a human person. The best way to define a human person is in this way. A human person is any being, oops, that's wrong. Any being of human origin whose highest fulfillment is happiness level 3 and 4. That's what makes you a human person. A dog is not a human person because he can never achieve that. An angel is not a human person because although he can achieve level 3 and 4, he is not a being of human origin. So he is a heavenly person, not a human person. You see? A human person is any being of human origin whose highest fulfillment is to achieve level 3 and level 4. Now, notice that I did not say a human person is any being of human origin who is achieving level 3 and level 4. It is any being who can achieve level 3 and level 4. Why is that an important distinction? It is not what you are currently doing that gives you your value and makes you protectable under the law. It is your future potential that gives you your value. It is not the fulfillment that makes you valuable. It is your potential to fulfill that gives you your value right now. If that were not true, then you would have no value when you are asleep, because you are not fulfilling level 3 and 4. You would have no value and no human personhood when you are under anesthesia and having surgery. You would have no value and no personhood when you are bored watching television, vegging in front of the TV. You would have no value and no personhood when you are being cruel, angry, suspicious, frustrated, cynical, selfish. During all those times, suddenly you lose your value and you lose your human personhood. So we can enslave you, we can torture you, we can kill you, because you're not a human person at that time. And of course we know that cannot be true. What makes you a human person is that you have the potential to achieve levels 3 and level 4. Is that true for you? Yes. And when I speak to the most secular audiences in America, atheists, they agree with that. They do not want to have their value depend on their intelligence or their physical abilities or what they are doing right now. They want the government to respect that they have a future potential to do good, and so protect them now. And so I say to them, okay, does an unborn child, 3 weeks old in the womb, have a future potential to achieve level 3 and 4? And they cannot deny it. Then it is as valuable as you are, and must be protected by law equally to you, or you make a contradiction.
Well, we were discussing about a situation we recently came across with. There was a situation, a dumb and deaf girl misused by someone and she got pregnant. And we tried to counsel the family, and only once we communicated with them and they were refused to communicate. And I think these situations, people try to do, maybe they're first, though they knew all these things, all this fact, they may want to save their pride, they may want to give more preference to their social status, so they may think to destroy the baby. Similar something like what's happening during the war time. People say war, people died because of the war, but as we know behind that, sometimes we are getting news like soldiers are misusing the victims, all those things. Same like for another reason, they are executing the babies or people, I think.
Thank you.
Thanks, Indo.
It is difficult sometimes to know, how do we teach this to younger people? This is difficult philosophy, right? How do we teach this to younger people? Or people who are simple, or people who are uneducated, or people who don't have the ability or the time for heavy philosophy? The debate will help you see that. And it is not that difficult. For example, when my daughter was 2 years old, Juliet, we taught her big words because she was very articulate. She could say big words and they would roll off her tongue. So we taught her how to say the word transcendental. A little 2-year-old running around saying transcendental. And she learned how to say the word serendipity and onomatopoeia, right? And all these big words. And one day I was changing her diaper on the diaper table. And she was playing with her fingers, and suddenly she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "Mommy, what does transcendental mean anyway?" 2 years old. And I said, "Oh, how do you teach that to a 2-year-old?" I said, "Well, let me think about that." Now in America, we are obsessed with germs, right? Everything must be perfectly clean. We wipe our hands all the time, wash our hands all the time. We carry around the little, the wipes, to wipe our hands and disinfect, constantly disinfect and cleaning. And, you shake somebody's hand and then you, excuse me, wash your hands, right? And then you talk to somebody and you're like, psh, okay? Because we're so obsessed with it. And here you have learned that germs can be your friend. Because if you constantly purify and clean and sterilize everything, a germ comes and your body doesn't know how to fight it. Cleanliness is important to a point, but it's also important to learn how to live with germs, so your body learns to fight them, and you have a better immune system. But anyway, we are always teaching, clean, clean. So I was telling my daughters every time we go out in public, don't touch the toilet, don't touch the sink, don't touch the floor, don't touch the bottom of your shoe. All the time, American mothers are saying this to their children. Well, anyway, Juliet asks me, what does transcendental mean? So I think, how do I explain? I said, well, transcendental means something that is really real, but you cannot touch it. And she goes, oh, you mean like the toilet? No, not like the toilet. So for very young ages, it is not possible to explain. But when children reach the age of 8, 9, 10 years old, they can understand these concepts. We must never think that young people cannot understand. They do understand. But we must learn to articulate it in a way they can understand. So later I will show you a video that we created for students in 9th, 10th, 11th standard that helps them understand what you have learned, but simplified. So we will show you a method of how to do that a little later. But let me go through the last 3 principles. Oftentimes now, the abortion movement will use this argument. They will say, of course, people want to live for level 3 and 4. Of course they do, and that's good. And of course, it is a human person. That's fine. Okay? It is a human baby, it is a human person. But now, their argument has advanced. They will say, it doesn't matter, because I must put myself first. Sometimes you must harm another human being in order to avoid suffering. Sometimes you must cause a harm to what you know is a human person because you are trying to avoid suffering. And that's part of what you were trying to raise. Who was it? Yes, when you commented. The avoidance of suffering. Human beings desire to avoid suffering. And it is compassionate to want to do that because we experience empathy. But we forget what true empathy means and what real compassion is. Real compassion does not violate the rules of ethics. It is very important to teach people at very young ages that there are rules of morality that must not be broken, because when we break those rules, it harms people. Breaking the rules causes great harm and is the opposite of compassion. There are 3 basic principles of ethics or of morality. I'll go past that, okay? Oh, I forgot this one. I did want to teach this one. 3 basic rules of morality. And they come from an understanding of who the human person is. Back in the mid-1500s, at the same time that Francisco Suarez was alive, the Jesuit Catholic priest I taught you about, who developed the theory of rights, human rights, there was another Catholic priest, a Dominican Catholic priest in Spain, the same country that Francisco Suarez was from, his name was Bartolomé de las Casas. And Bartolome de las Casas was unhappy, very unhappy with the treatment of Native Americans, right, by the Spanish conquistadors who came to conquer the Americas and claim the land. And they found these Native Americans there, and because their skin color was different, and they had more what the Spaniards considered to be more primitive forms of art, more primitive forms of worship, more primitive language, more primitive understanding of the sky and astronomy, they believed that the Native Americans were a lesser form of human person. Okay? Not as fully human person as the Spaniards. And Bartolome de las Casas says, that is not true. What gives you value as a human being is not what you are doing right now, what we talked about before. It's not your current level of development. What gives you value right now is who you could become in your future if you live to your highest potential. And so did we talk about how the nervous system, when it is fully developed, did we talk about that with your group? No, okay. So I was debating at the University of California, Berkeley, about abortion in front of these students, almost 1,000 students. And I asked him, is there ever a time that you stop doing abortion, that you won't do abortion? He says, yes, I don't do abortion when the nervous system is fully developed. Because when it is fully developed, it is a human person, right? Because now it can feel pain. We didn't talk about this in this group? No. Right? No, okay. All right. I said, that's very interesting. I said, do you know when the human nervous system is fully developed? I mean, you're a doctor, right? Do you know when it is fully developed? And I ask you, do you know when the nervous system is fully developed? At what age is the fetus when the nervous system is fully developed? What age? Maybe guess. What do you think? 3 months? Can you say louder?
Even before.
Even before then, right? Maybe 2 months? 8 weeks? Does anybody know? 6 weeks? 3 weeks? The human nervous system is not fully developed until you are at least 22 years old. Who is 22 years old or older in this audience? Who is less than 22? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you are less than 22 years old. Yes, you are not human persons. And that is what I said to this group of college students. I said, according to Dr. Potts, you are not human persons because no one here has achieved the age of 21 yet, except for me and Dr. Potts. So whose side do you want to be on? Right? His argument is that he would abort you right now if he could, right? If the law would allow it, because your nervous system is not fully developed. Right? Be very careful of that definition. Right? But how do we know how to treat people? Because this is very important. A person can believe in level 3 and 4. And they can believe it is a human person, but still say abortion should be legal. Because sometimes suffering is so bad that it is justified. Okay? And this is where we say there are certain ethical principles that must never be broken. The first principle is called the principle of non-maleficence. Maleficence comes from the Latin word male, which means bad or evil. And so this principle teaches do no evil, do no harm. And you have this tradition in your culture, right? The concept, the concept exists in the Muslim faith, it exists in the Hindu tradition, do not harm. Do not harm. It exists in the Christian tradition. Every major worldwide religious tradition has some formulation of this principle. Do no harm. Avoid unnecessary harms. And if a harm is unavoidable, minimize it. Okay? As least as possible. It is also called the silver rule. Do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you. When your country legalized abortion up through 20 weeks of pregnancy in 1971, it violated this principle. It is okay to do a harm as long as the baby is before this age. My country violated it too in 1973. It is okay to do a harm, and our argument was we don't know if it's a person or not. That's what the Supreme Court said in my We don't know if it's a person or not. Everybody disagrees. So until we find out the truth, we will allow abortion, which was a violation of the principle that says, if you do not know, avoid harm first. Right? And then if you discover later that, oh, it's not a human person, okay, then you can take the act. Until then, avoid the unnecessary harm. That is the most basic principle of all ethics, of all morality. If we violate this principle, you cannot have any other ethical principle, because they all depend on this one. Do not steal is an ethical principle, a moral principle, right? Do not steal. Why not? Because it harms relationships and it harms individual people. Do not lie. Why not? Because it harms people. Do not kill. Why not? Because it harms people. Do you see? This is the most basic principle of all ethics. And it leads to this principle, the principle of consistent ends and means. And you have probably heard this one before. The ends do not justify the means. You cannot use an evil method to achieve a good end. They will argue that abortion is a necessary evil because you need it for women to achieve equality, women to avoid suffering, right? Women to escape poverty, for women to have help their health, their fertility. But this principle teaches you cannot use an evil means to bring about a good end. Why not? Because the evilness of the method you are using will undermine the good you are trying to achieve. It will make the good collapse into the evil. For example, it is your father's birthday, and you want to do a good because you love your father. You want to bring about a good by showing him your love. So you want to get him a gift for Father's Day. But you have no money. So when he is not looking, you go to his wallet and you steal 50 or I don't know, 1,000 rupees, and you buy him a nice gift to show him your love. Have you done good? No. The good act was undermined by the evil action. It collapsed into the evil. Because what you did was, you wanted to show him your love, that you respect him and you honored him, but you did it by doing an act that disrespected and dishonored him. Okay? So you cannot bring about a good by using an evil means. So they will say, abortion can cause many goods. Maybe. But you are using an evil method to bring about the good means. You know it is a human person. You want to live for level 3 and 4, but you are using an evil method to bring about a good end. There are some exceptions here we don't have time for on the bottom of the screen. Okay, but here is a good example in the United States of what happens when you violate this principle. Between 1932 and 1972, the United States Public Health Service conducted an experiment to learn more about the disease of syphilis and its effect on the adult African American male. At first, the study was very good. There was no cure for syphilis. And so they just studied and observed how syphilis affects the body to gain more information so they would know how to treat it. Halfway through the study, other scientists in another part of the world discovered that penicillin is an effective treatment against syphilis. These doctors found that out. They knew that, these scientists. But they refused to let the men know that because they did not want to interrupt their study. They were getting good data, contributing to scientific knowledge. So they did not inform the men. When trucks from the government came to administer penicillin to these people who were poor, the scientists turned the trucks away and would not allow them in. And as a result, many of the men died of syphilis. Many of them infected their wives, and many of their children were infected with congenital syphilis, which can cause blindness and other injuries and illnesses and even death. That is a good example that the ends do not justify the means. You cannot use an evil mean to get to a good end. Okay? Abortion is an example of that, using an evil method to get to a good end. And finally, there is this last principle, the principle that Bartolomé de las Casas gave us, of intrinsic dignity. Every human being deserves to be valued according to the full level of human potential. not according to what it has currently achieved. And we talked about that. So what I want to do now is just move now into some active engagement so you can see these principles in action. How do you actually use these to dialogue with people? So before they do that, I want to show you the short video, okay? So you can see how we are using these tools. It's a 5-minute animated video, and we will have it online for you that you can share it with others. We will post it. It's not posted yet because we are still finalizing the video. Our friends in Delhi helped us to produce this for Indian audiences. And when it is complete, we will upload it onto our website. I will put some cards here on this table that give you the address of our website where you can watch those videos. And it also has our email address where you can communicate with me as much as you need and as much as you like. Okay? So we'll watch this video.
Lena thinks that happiness comes from being a classical Indian dancer and hearing thousands of people cheer her name. Maria appreciates the things that make Sam and Lena happy, but she believes that real happiness comes from her faith in God and in doing good things to help other people. One day, Sam, Lena and Maria have got into an accident. All three of them are seriously injured. Sam has to sell his bungalow and many of his gadgets to pay for his doctor's visit. It is very sad because he thinks he will no longer have a good quality life. Lena can't dance anymore and is replaced by another classical dancer. She thinks her life is over because her successful career is over. Maria has a permanent back and neck pain and often needs help with simple tasks. She isn't happy about the accident, but somehow Maria doesn't seem to be depressed like Sam or in despair like Lena. Apparently, the way we define happiness has a lot to do with the way we understand success and quality of life. It can make a big difference to how we face the challenges in our lives. Have you ever noticed that when people are focused on their own selfish desires, they tend to make decisions about life's greatest test that they later regret, feel guilty about, or are even ashamed of? But when a person has faith, hope, and love, they usually make decisions with a healthier perspective about what really matters, and they can do things that are really generous, courageous, and even self-sacrificial. Putting the needs of other people ahead of our own needs brings out the best in us. Think about the difficult situation of abortion. Some people say that if an unborn child will come from a very poor family, or will be born with a disability, or will get in the way of her parents' plans for an education or a good job, abortion is the right answer. They say the baby will not have a good quality of life, and the parents will not be able to pursue their dreams for a successful life. But doesn't that all depend on how you are defining quality of life and success? Does quality of life really come from how many pleasure and gadgets we have? Is a successful life really defined by our education or career, or by trying to prove how much better we are than other people? When a baby is killed in an abortion because the parents believe the baby is threatening their success and quality of life, we all lose. We lose the chance to be generous. We lose the opportunity to sacrifice ourselves for a little human being who needs us. We miss out on the happiness that comes from accepting every member of the human family. And we lose our hearts along the way. What we thought was a good choice was actually a judgment that someone else's life wasn't worth living. Of course, life is not always easy. Sometimes it can be really difficult. But when was the last time you regretted giving up a part of your life to make a positive difference to someone else who was in need? People who sell abortion tell us that every child should be a wanted child. But what they are really saying is that if someone does not want you, the law should allow that person to kill you? That doesn't sound like the way to happiness. It sounds more like the road to selfishness, regret, and despair. If we really believe that happiness comes from something more than living for ourselves, if we really believe that true happiness is about giving our lives away by serving those around us, who are most in need of our love and compassion, then maybe we should reject the voices that are telling us that abortion is our solution and instead believe in something much better. Every child is a valuable member of our human family who gives us the opportunity to love, and we will welcome, care for, and protect all children no matter what.
All right, so he's going to state his position very quickly. I'm going to state my position, and then he will ask me questions. I will ask him questions, okay? So your position.
Yeah. So, what I have, okay, what about the case of an anomalous kid, okay, who is Down syndrome or mentally retarded? It's going to spoil his life. He's going to be a burden for the family. He's going to be a burden for the society. Once his parents dies by age, who will take care of him? Is it not more beneficial to send that baby straight to heaven than make a hell on earth?
Dino, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
What do you think makes life worth living?
Happiness, joy.
Happiness, but where does happiness come from for you?
From material things, mental satisfaction.
Satisfaction?
Yeah.
Do you think that happiness comes from family, from love? Do you think that happiness comes from being compassionate, generous to other people? Because I look at you and I think, this man desires abortion to be legal, not for bad reasons, but for good reasons, right?
Yes, of
because
course.
you care about women, yes?
And for the child.
And for the child, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems to me that you believe happiness means love, compassion, goodness, yes?
And doing good for the child.
Being good for the child. So, are you telling us that a child with a disability can never be happy, can never know love, can never know kindness, can never know generosity and compassion?
He may not understand happiness because he does not have a sense to think what is happy.
So you're arguing that children with you mean like a brain anomaly?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe the brain is not fully developed in the child.
Yes.
Have you ever known a child with a brain anomaly? Have you ever met one? In person?
Yeah, I think so.
You have? You think so?
Yeah.
I have known 5 children with Down syndrome. And I will tell you, they are some of the happiest people in the world. They are very innocent and they know love. They understand what love is. I have also known several teenage children who have had serious mental disabilities because of car accidents, right? Or because of other trauma, stroke and other trauma. And they may not be able to communicate to you what they are thinking all the time. But they do show that they understand love. They respond to love, and they respond when someone is cruel. Do you know, Dino, that when someone is in a vegetative state, you know what that is, vegetative state?
Yeah.
When somebody has had a brain injury, and they appear to be vegetative, where they do not look like they have any consciousness. Science now has discovered, using a technique with CAT scans, that 30% of the people in vegetative states are actually fully conscious. They can hear and understand what you say. This tells us something. It seems to me like out of compassion, you are placing a judgment on children with disabilities and assuming that they can never know love, can never know goodness, can never know compassion. But there's evidence that you are wrong. So tell me this. If you are wrong, and you discover that those children can know love and kindness and generosity and even have a faith experience, if, I only mean if, would you change your mind?
Okay, let's come to the next point.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So what about the suffering of the parent? It's a Herculean task. It needs a lot of money. Indian culture. Okay, the medicines, I would say the treatments are expensive. I cannot afford for long treatment. I need to quit my job to take care of my kid. What about the suffering I have to go through all my life? What about my other kids? Who will take care of them?
Yes. You would not do it after they are born.
Yeah.
But you would use that as an argument to kill them before they are born.
Yeah.
Isn't that inconsistent? So
well,
really, you are agreeing with me that that is not a good reason to kill people, right? because they are poor, destitute, disabled, in need, that is not a good reason to kill your children. Why do you believe that is a good reason to kill the child before he is born? What is the difference? He is still a human person.
Okay, let's get to the next point.
Okay?
What about the
Let me
case?
stop for just a moment. Do you notice something about what I am doing in this debate? I am not spending all of my time talking to Dino, right? I'm talking to you. Because I'm not trying to change his mind in a debate. I'm trying to change your mind. And I want to relate to you and communicate to you. Okay? Sometimes I look at Dino because I care about him, and it would look weird if I was just here. So I would look at him too. But I want to look to you. Secondly, I smile when I talk, unless it's serious. I don't want to say, we should not be killing children. Okay, I don't do that. But I smile. It's joyful. And you notice what else? I'm talking to Dino. I am giving him humanity. He is not my enemy. Satan is my enemy. And I am assuming the best in Dino. I am assuming he wants what I want. You want good. You want love. You have compassion. I am not judging Dino. But I am showing him that he is making mistakes. Okay, do you see that?
I have two more cases.
Yes, okay.
So, let's think about the scenario: a woman is being raped.
Yes.
Absolutely not in the Indian context. Okay, a woman, if she's pregnant before marriage and she delivers a child, we believe her future is kind of ruined. Okay, the society will look down on her. She will not have she will struggle to bring up a kid. People will look, who is this child's father? The father of this person. So in spite of all the struggles the woman has to go through for rape, why do you think it's better to abort the child?
Yes, that is a terrible problem, Dino. What are you doing, Dino, to stop the stigma of rape? What are you doing to change your culture so that people do not judge the woman who is raped? What are you doing to solve that actual problem? Tell me.
I am pro-choice. It's like moving a mountain.
Okay, it is not like moving a mountain. In my country, we are not better than your country. We are not more special, more intelligent, but we do not place the stigma on rape because we know the woman did not cause this. It is not her fault. She is beautiful and dignified, and you know that too. Do you know you have so many skills and so many talents, but you think you do not have the power to change your culture? You do.
Yes. So okay, let's not lose the focus.
Okay.
We are trying to prevent the cause, which I understand, but I'm speaking about the effect. Okay, she's already pregnant by a rape. Okay, now what do we do?
Now what do we do? Okay. Your solution is that we give the woman an abortion.
Yes.
She's pregnant from rape.
Yes.
Okay. What problem does that solve?
Understanding the risk of physical and psychological consequences.
Physical consequences.
Physical accidents.
So a woman who is raped, does she have more physical consequences of giving birth to a child than a woman who is not raped? That is not scientifically proven.
Yes, but she may not have to undergo the trauma of bringing up her child without a father.
Okay. And I agree with you on this. A woman who has been raped now has a child that she did not intend and it was forced on her. And there will be psychological trauma, I agree. But did you know this? And I wonder if this might make you pause a minute. When a woman has an abortion, she undergoes when a woman is raped, she has what's called post-traumatic stress disorder. She has depression, fear, self-hatred, guilt, shame. She thinks it's her fault. She experiences nightmares. She feels alienated from God. She is afraid of the judgment of other people. She has all these things when she is raped. Medical science now has proven that when a woman has an abortion, in over 90% of the cases, the woman who has aborted her child has the same post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. Fear, depression, despair, suicidal thoughts, feelings as if she is alienated from God, nightmares.
But those are all for some time only.
Say again?
Those are all for a few months or maybe a year. Post that she should be okay.
No, that is not what the statistics show. For some of these women, they do not manifest these symptoms for 5 or 10 years until after the abortion. And these symptoms do not go away. That is not what the studies show. So all I am arguing is this. If what you are doing is trying to lessen her trauma, abortion does not make the trauma less. It adds to her burden. Okay? But here's another thing I want you to consider. What if the woman did not have an abortion, the woman who is raped, and she chooses to give life to the child, right? And then she raises the child. But when the child turns 2 years old, he begins to resemble the rapist, and now he causes trauma to her, severe psychological burden. And we want to ease her burden and her trauma. So would you vote for a law that would allow her to take her 2-year-old son to a clinic to have him put to death in order to lessen and ease her burden?
I would place it for adoption.
Thank you, Dina. And that is the same thing that I would say we must do for the unborn child of rape. How does it help the woman when we tell her, I will help you kill your child and then you will be okay? That does not help a woman. That tells a woman you do not have enough courage, enough heroic nobility, enough love in your heart to care for this child. I think it is much better to say to the woman, I will not judge you. I will not stigmatize you. I will not abandon you. I will walk this walk with you. And I will help you care for this child. And then if you cannot care for this child, I will help you give the child up for adoption. That is true feminism.
Okay,
Please.
I have the last point. The case of an incest. We have cases where the father rapes the daughter. The daughter is pregnant. If the daughter continues the pregnancy, this will ruin the entire family status. It will ruin the relationship of the mother, everyone in the family. Instead of just kill the child, the problem is solved.
I see. It solves the problem. So you kill the child and you send the girl back into the same unhealthy situation to be raped again by her father because he is hiding his secret.
Maybe he changed after one instance.
Really? Deep.
It can happen. He can change. Maybe he understood the mistake. Maybe he was under alcoholic addiction or something.
If he can change, then maybe he can change when he sees his own grandchild. Abortion does not solve incest. It hides it. And it does not solve the girl's problem. It hides it. This is not a problem of the baby. This is a problem of us in our culture. That we will not face this problem. That we will not admit this is a problem in the human heart. It is not the fault of the girls. That is what must be changed. We need to raise above thinking abortion can solve every problem. We are smarter than that. Now I pose you this question because it's my turn to ask a question. What about if the mother's life is in danger? Right? She's going to die unless you have an abortion. Thank you. What would you do?
Okay. You're asking me as a product for
Her choice. What would you do?
Oh, it's very easy. Kill the child.
You would tell her to have an abortion?
Of course.
Yes, of course you would. That's what I thought you would say. Do you know how often that case occurs? How often is it?
The real cases, very rare.
Very
Unreal cases, very so much.
Very, very rare.
Very much.
Yeah. I know a woman who is a perinatologist, a OBGYN perinatologist. She takes care of babies in the womb, OBGYN. Only she takes care of babies who are very sick, very disabled, terminally ill, or the mothers who are very disabled, very sick, who will die, who have serious complications in their pregnancy. That is all for 30 years. That is all she has done, is care for those kinds of pregnancies. In 30 years, she has only had to terminate pregnancy to save the life of the mother once. Only one time has she had to do it. Very, very rare. But because she is a pro-life doctor, she did not need to kill the baby to save the mother's life. It is not the death of the baby that saves the mother's life. It is removing the baby from the mother's body. And because we remove the baby will die. But we do not kill the baby. It is not necessary to kill the baby to save the mother's life. It is necessary only that we first remove the baby. And then if we can reimplant the baby in the womb, right, then we would do that. But in some cases we cannot, and the baby will die, Master.
So I have a particular case of high BP, blood pressure. High blood pressure,
yes,
it happens during pregnancy. So it is quite possible that the mother have high blood pressure during the pregnancy.
Sure.
And there are known cases about some mothers have died also.
Yes, yes.
So I am feeling it's right, the doctor has a right to remove the child to save the mother, though we know it will kill the child.
If that were the case, that you have to remove the child in order to save the mother's life, then you can do that. A pro-life person would agree with you that you can remove the child to save her life, even if you know the child cannot live outside the womb. But what I argue with you is that you cannot do is to directly kill the child. You cannot do that because, again, it is not a dead child that saves her life.
It is removing the baby, and then we must do everything possible to save the child's life. And if we cannot, then it is God's will. It is nothing we can do.
So is it not understood that if you're removing a child in the 20th week
Yes.
or 16th week,
Yes.
then the probabilities are very less.
Yes.
It's more or less understood the child will die.
Yes,
So are you not just turning the terminologies a little bit that you use for your own convenience, abortion, saving, it's all the same.
The difference between you and me is that you are arguing for a dead child. What I am arguing for is to try to save both the mother and the child, because both are valuable. But you cannot leave the baby there, because if you leave the baby in the mother's body and he is not viable, if she dies, what will happen to the baby?
Baby also dies.
The baby also dies. So the first step to saving both lives is to remove the baby. And then we must improve medical technology to try to save the life of the baby younger and younger. 20 years ago, you could not save a baby's life prior to 26 weeks of life. Today, you can save the baby's life as young as now, 18 weeks after conception. So medical technology must always try to do better to save the life of that child. Don't you agree?
I agree.
Thank you. Okay. This will be difficult, right? You'll feel like I don't know the answers and I can't do what Dino does and I can't do what Camille does, but you can. The Holy Spirit will guide you. Okay? And with practice, you will get better. Questions. Now we will take some questions. Should we pass the mic around, Dino?
I have a question from my own setup, where I come from. So I am from a culture where female child is considered to be something burdensome. So
He's telling what female can decide. He comes from a culture where the female children are considered as burdensome.
Female.
A female child, yes.
So they...
because they have in the future, after they have to be brought up by the parents, they have to give an education and they have to be given in marriage with lot of dowries.
So the education is not given for the male child?
No, it is given.
Yeah,
because the
dowry factor. Yes, the female child is a burden because to get her off, you have to pay a lot of
I
money.
don't want to have the daughter because I will have to pay the dowry, so I will leave the child to die after birth so that I can try again to have a son, so that I do not have to worry about the financial responsibility of the dowry. I understand that. What is the problem? Is the problem, let me ask you this, is the problem that girl babies are bad? Or is the problem that a system that causes people to abandon their babies because they are girls, is that the problem?
This is a rural question, rural idea of
Then I understand. So what she's asking is the problem because the girl child, or is the problem the understanding of the culture?
This is part of my argument. I'm not asking you. It's a rhetorical question. I'm asking, what I'm saying that we must do to the culture is to insist that girl babies are not bad. Right? And maybe we need to change our culture a little bit so that people are not so afraid of having girls. And to teach girls are a gift. Maybe we lessen the burden of the dowry, right? And we say, okay, if you cannot afford a dowry, we have less expectations for the dowry. Maybe that concept is what needs to be changed a little bit. I'm not saying get rid of the dowry. I don't have any right to say that.
It's illegal in India to have a dowry.
It's illegal. Oh, but they do it anyway. So maybe again, we need to change this concept of dowry that causes people to think that the girl baby is a problem. That seems to be the sickness, not that the child is a girl. So I would agree with you, we have a problem. I would disagree about the solution.
There's another after effect of this. The current statistics shows the ratio
Of boys to girls.
Yeah.
Is-
So you're all lucky because you're brothers. People like us, we are in trouble because future generation may not have enough girls to marry.
Look at all the boys and look at the girls on empty seats here. Good question. Other questions? Yes, and then back at, oh, that's your chair, that's your name. Yes.
present we see genital alteration.
Sexual realignment surgery.
Genital alteration child. Is it good because a particular woman or family wants my child should be such and such like this.
Are you talking about like with
Genius.
no, I understand. But are you saying
that when the baby already has a certain gender, we do surgery to change the gender?
Basically, China, they are doing one for
Okay. They're trying to
To manipulate the gene in the child so that the sexuality comes out female or male. Yes.
We can have any effect as expected from our part on baby.
I would argue against that for two reasons. Number one reason is because when you manipulate the genes in an animal, right, so that we can have a bigger cow or more milk production, we know now that is extremely harmful to us. And so now there are whole movements to stop the production, to manipulate the genes in animals, or to manipulate the genetic code of carrots, so the carrot grows bigger or the tomato grows redder and sweeter. When you do that and you change the genetic code, it causes mutations in our own bodies, and it disrupts the healthy growth of our own bodies, right? And so we should be very wary, we should be very cautious about changing the genetic code of a human being, because we are tinkering with something that is intended to be a certain way. And when you mess with the genetic code, we already have evidence in animals and in plant life that you can end up doing great harm to human beings who consume those foods. And that's why we have movements about non-genetically engineered foods that are hitting our food chains and causing serious problems in our food chain. So that is the first argument against it. But my second argument is this. If we allow that, and we say this is a good thing, what is it that we are saying? Your body must look a certain way, or you are not good enough. Do we really want a culture like Nazi Germany that says unless you have blonde hair and blue eyes and white skin, you are not good enough? Is that what we want India to become? Why would we allow that? I want you to be a certain shape, a certain size. It fits my desires. What that does is it says the value of a human being becomes determined by what the parents want. Instead of saying the value of a human being comes from who you are made by God. So you now have made a human being a commodity, a product, to serve the parents' wishes, rather than allowing the human being to be an end in itself, a gift made in the image of God, not made in our own image, but made in God's image. I have a warning that is very dangerous to do, because we will begin then to judge other people who are already born. Oh, you don't have the right hair color. You don't have the right makeup. You are too short. You are too fat. You are the wrong gender. We allow that in our unborn children, and it affects our mentality of how we judge everyone.
Next question.
I just want to know on HPV vaccine. I just want to know about that was given to 5,000 girls in UP as well as in Hyderabad. That was against the consent of these girls, saying that, I think I'm loud enough. Yeah, HPV vaccine, human papilloma virus, was given to prevent infection in girls, but the girl's age was 10 and 12, 13, 14, while these girls who are in the hostels, etc., they get married. Educated girls get married very later. I just want to know your idea on HPV vaccine, because the clinical trial 1, 2, 3, 4 levels were not over before the vaccine was made available. Then there is also a group of ethical doctors known as Medico Friends Circle. They talk about a lot of vaccines in which mercury poisoning is done deliberately so that a group of people in Africa or in the developing countries or poorer countries where these were introduced, so the next generation of girls don't have children. Yes. So I just wanted to know about that. Also about surrogacy. There are 3 parts of my question. The next one is surrogacy in India. There is a lot of cloud around the way things are done, unethical practices, all that. The third thing about IVF. Lot of IVF clinics in Bangalore, all over India. Lot of embryos are created, and for the success rate of the clinic or the doctor, for the name, they create a lot of embryos we know these things are happening because there are a lot of medical professionals who discuss, who are colleagues. A lot of embryos are kept and destroyed later. So where does Catholic Church stand on these things?
Let me deal with the last question first and then the other two. Do you want to handle the HPV one? Might be more familiar?
You're telling the vaccine has some sterilization content, right? That's what you're telling?
That was the second part.
Yeah, yeah, the vaccine
One
is,
part of it is the ethical use because parents, children, nobody know, and at the medical level itself. That's
yeah,
not
knowingly, if it allows sterilization, okay, if I'm aware the vaccine contains sterilization, obviously we should not do it, but I don't know why people are pushing for it or doing it. I have heard about this, but I don't have any authentic information so far to say that it is currently, all vaccines have like this. So we don't have any clarity, but knowingly it should not be done like that. It is wrong. Because if you're sterilizing a woman, unknowing to her knowledge, awareness knowledge, even I have objected. There is a sterilization enforced in the schools for my children. I objected in the vaccination, yes. I objected as a parent. I do not want them to be vaccinated in the school without my consent. So I did that.
In the United States, in most states, we are allowed to have a religious objection or a moral objection, a conscientious objection to vaccinations, if you want to. And for my family, we allowed our children to have some vaccinations, but not chickenpox vaccination, not MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella, because those vaccinations were derived from aborted fetuses. And so here's what the Catholic Church teaches now. It teaches it is not, you can choose to vaccinate your children from vaccines that have been developed from aborted fetuses, because of the concept that the line of cells now is far removed. It is so far removed from the original source that you can vaccinate your child. So it does not consider it a sin, it does not declare it a sin for you to vaccinate your child using vaccines that were derived from aborted fetuses for MMR and chickenpox. But they also say, the church also teaches that it is okay for you to religiously object. And so for my children, we did not give them chickenpox or MMR, because chickenpox usually does not kill people. I had the chickenpox. All of my siblings had the chickenpox. Most people did at my age when there was no vaccine. MMR, we did not give, but then when we were coming to India, we were told by our doctor that it is a bigger problem here than it is in the United States, so we vaccinated them. But there's part of me that regretted doing it. Not so much, I believe the church's teachings that it is far enough removed, right, from the original stem cell, the original cell line. But the problem I have with the vaccinations is that there is a lot of evidence now that these vaccines that are using these DNA is harming. It causes autism, it can cause other defects and other harms and disrupt the development of the nervous system in children who are very young. And so a lot of people refuse to get, not on religious grounds, but on health reasons, to not vaccinate. So, you know, it is an important debate to have, because we do want people to be healthy and not suffer these diseases, but we also don't want to introduce more problems. Oh, the other question on IVF. There are 3 reasons why we should never agree to IVF treatment. And that there are 3 reasons why it should never be performed. The first reason is what you already suggested. The only way they can do successful in vitro fertilization is to fertilize many eggs, because often it is unsuccessful. And they will take several of the fertilized eggs and implant them in the hopes that some of them will survive. Okay? And then what happens is the rest of them, they throw away. These are human beings, real valuable, morally valuable human beings that deserve legal protection, that are being thrown in the garbage. So that's problem number 1. And this, along with this problem is frequently the mother of IVF will have multiple pregnancies, and then they will do selective reduction. They will take some of the babies and she will say, I only wanted 1, so they will abort 2, 3, 4, 5 of the pregnancies. So it has real physical problems to do that related to abortion. There is a second reason, though, why IVF is wrong. Because we are made in God's image, and you are so valuable that you deserve to be brought into the world, to be brought into creation through an act of total self-gift of one to another. It is impossible for that to occur in a petri dish with a scientist as your creator. Technically, it can happen, and you can create human beings that way. But it is against our dignity to be brought into the world that way. Now, I'm not saying that the child that is brought into the world through IVF is no longer dignified, has no moral worth. He does. But his dignity has been offended against. He had a right to be brought into the world through the self-surrender of a man to a woman in a exclusive marital embrace. And that has been denied. Now the argument is yes, but if they did not do IVF, the child would not have been brought into the world at all. There would be no child. And this is my argument. This is what my answer is.
So we can have one, considering the time we are supposed to close, so we can have one.
Yes.
Yeah, one last question.
But let me just finish. The answer to that is, we do not have a right to children. We have a responsibility to be open to children. But you do not have a right to a child, right? As if it were the child that belongs to you. Child is a gift from God. And so medical science should do everything possible to help the human body achieve pregnancy the way God intended. And there are lots of methods for that do not require in vitro fertilization. There's a clinic in the United States in Nebraska that can help. They help 70% of the cases of women whose IVF techniques failed. Go to this clinic in Nebraska, and through natural methods, they can achieve pregnancy. So we do have scientific methods to help the body naturally do what it should be doing in the marital embrace without resorting to in vitro fertilization. Maybe one more question then?
The question is, what do we say that if, of course, all of us who are here, we believe in God, and then we believe in the confession. We are Christians and Catholics. But if someone is asking, they think that God is merciful, and then they think that they can do abortion, and since God is merciful, we can go and confess, and then it is clear. So what do you say?
In order to be forgiven of a sin, you must have sincere and authentic sorrow for your sin, contrition for your sin, right? If your attitude is, oh, I can commit this sin, God will just forgive me, you do not have sincere contrition, right? You are assuming that God's forgiveness will occur out of ego. Right? It is your ego that is taken over. I can do whatever I want because God will forgive. That is an attempt to manipulate God, right? To force God to forgive you because after all, Lord, you promised to be all merciful, right? That is not true contrition. Okay, so you would probably not be forgiven if you have that attitude. And the second thing, of course, is that yes, if you do have true contrition, God will forgive you, but you will still suffer the consequences. Abortion will still affect you in a negative way. You have still brought about a great harm to the baby, to yourself, and to the whole human community. So to have that attitude is to forget that you will still suffer consequences. God can forgive sins, but He knows, and we know, that the sin still commits consequences in the world.
So maybe we can have a word of thanks for you. So I know there are many questions, but she'll be available outside. So we need to clear the venue and the brothers need to arrange everything and all. So we can have word of thanks. So I invite Sister Dennis to give word of thanks, and then she'll be available outside. You can free to speak to her.
And on your way out the door, please pick up one of these cards that I have on the table that will give you the address to our website, which has the videos loaded up for you.
You also have this, can one of some of these come and distribute this to everyone?
This handout has all of the principles that you learned today. And then also on the other side of the card is my email address. It is very easy. It is india@healingtheculture.com. So 2 things I would ask of you. If you would like to be involved further in this ministry, in some way, maybe just by keeping informed and having us put you on our mailing list, or maybe you would like to start a group, Healing the Culture India, here, or maybe you would like to be like Dino and be a leader, or speak in public, or do debates, or learn how to train others. Any of those ways, if you want to be involved, please email us, and Dino will get in touch with you, okay? Rather than pass around a sheet of paper where you have to write out your email, just pick up a card, email us and let us know, I want to be involved, and we will pass your email on to Dino, and then he will, Dino, there you are, and then he will help you figure out how you would like to be involved, okay? And if you have a question
for me that did not get answered, you can write us at this address anytime, and I will answer you personally. But I will not answer you until March, because I will be in India through February, traveling a lot. So if you ask today, you may have to wait a few weeks. Okay?
Dear friends, on behalf of all of us present here, I'm given this pleasure and the privilege of saying a word of thanks to our dear Camille. I'm sure you will agree with me that in this few hours that she was with us, she has captured us, isn't it? I saw you so still and so much involved that I think is a great word of thanks that we can give to her. Dear Camille, without trying to fascinate you, it's something which you have achieved, which many professors were not able to achieve. It's really difficult to make this youngster sit still and listen to you and to respond to you. I think that's real applause that she deserves, right? And it was not because you entertained us, it was because you considered our dignity and treated us with due respect, or probably you thought that we will be able to, or you were convinced that we will be able to follow you, all what you were trying to say right from the beginning. And they were really fascinated. I'm sure in the beginning we found it difficult to understand what you were trying to say, but you were so fast and but you simply captured us, because we were able to enter into your thought process very quickly. And that's a great success for you. Well, you began appreciating your beautiful country, which we also appreciate. That showed how much love you have for your motherland. But that did not make you deny the problems. And that way you subtly brought us into looking at our culture, healing our culture without telling names. I think it is in the last sentence that you said, we need to see how we can heal Indian culture. But you didn't say it from the beginning, but you communicated it in such a way that all what was happening in America is already happening here in every sphere, and it is our responsibility to see what we can do, not just listen and forget about it, but to enter into the hearts of human beings, although corrupt, yet has the potential to turn to the Lord and to be able to live in the second, third, and the fourth level. But it is confusions. It's more of the confusions rather than what we really believe. I think we needed that clarification. What do we really believe in? Where do we want to live? At what level do we want to live? Of course, as brothers and sisters committed or trying to commit to consecrated life and youth, Jesus Youth, we have certain value system. But in this confused time of science and technology and the media and even the politics and the governance, everything is saying something different, and we are trying to say something different. And it was so comforting to listen to you. There is a greater voice in the spirit that is powerful than these voices that we are hearing. Well, about whatever you have told us, I simply want to say, and I'm sure in this group that you have addressed, there are potential pro-life members who would make commitment for sure, because at this age they are very, very open to the truth. And so your effort to communicate to us that we have inherent dignity created in the image and likeness of God, and just as we have, every child, unborn, born, has the dignity, and it is our responsibility as followers of Jesus to care for it at whatever cost, but trusting always that it is the Father who is in control, and He allows things for a reason, and He will bring about good no matter how evil things seem to be. So learning to trust and surrender, we will certainly be of support to you in some way. I'm sure I'm making this promise on behalf of all of us that we will try and commit ourselves in whatever little way that we can, and above all we will pray for you and your team that you will continue to grow and communicate this message that we will together be able to heal the culture of our nation with the grace of God. God bless you, and I want to also thank you. especially thank Dino, and he is really, really indomitable, I should say. Somehow we wanted to see that, at least the novices, and I think that's better because they have a great audience as they go out. And also the Jesus Youth, I may not know many of them, but their commitment always inspires me. Then all those, I'm certainly Father Varghese, who was given this place. I was supposed to host, but then the hall wasn't ready yet. And the brothers and priests of Clarence Bowen. Who else do you know? Yes, sure. And not only got the place organized and all, but they were very participative. So thanks one and all, and God bless you.
I also like to thank Jasmine, who was with me roaming around all this place, inviting people. Thank you, Jasmine, for that. And also want to thank Jimmy, who's driving around taking my kids to classes when I was here. So thank you all for this, and hope you had a wonderful time. So just the idea of the seminar is so that you as religious, you're going out to the world. I may see only a few, but you're going to see thousands. You want to see thousands, and you should have this message, inbuilt in you, so that you know what is the truth, and you learn more on it. And whenever you have opportunities, you can speak the truth. Okay, and you will touch millions. You will do confessions, whatever it is. So many things you will do. So you're also blessed. I don't have that opportunity. I have a different opportunity. so it's like that. Thank you, Father Thomas, for your support. Also, thanks to Father Louis, who gave the addressing ceremony. Okay, so I thank Father short prayer or something. Okay.
Heavenly Father, we especially thank this opportunity that you have given to us this evening. We especially thank the people who undertook these difficulties, and also they undertook their own load on their pain, who went along inviting people, and also the resource person who took this class. Lord, give them the graces to continue their ministry and convince many more people the growth and the vocation that you have given them. May Almighty God bless them, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
I'm indeed happy and privileged to attend this seminar on pro-life active movement given by Camille. It really enriched my knowledge about the importance of life. We know life comes from God. God is the one who gives. And life can be given to this world through our parents. The love, the fruit of their love is a child. This is what she was expressing through her talk and telling us that every child is important and gives from God. Love your life and live your life. And she was basing on different principles that really touched my understanding of life. We often fail to understand what really life is, but it is beyond our comprehension. And through her talks, she made us to understand that the principle of non-contradiction is the base for this pro-life active movement. We often think that the unborn child in the womb, is whether it is a person or it is a human being. Our society more gives that if that child comes out because of social stigma, if suppose a woman or a girl is raped, we immediately go to the hospital or say to doctor that about this child, because we don't want this child, because this child will cause a social stigma on our family, our status will go off. In reality, they are just denying the fact that they have done a mistake. They are not owning up their responsibility. But as a human being, we need to respect and the dignity of human life, whether it is born or it is yet to be born. See, when we ask a young person, when a child is born, we respect, because we see potentiality in or her, that she will be in a time she will grow or he will grow and become a wonderful person in the society. Why can't we think of that same reality in the womb of in the womb of a mother? A child is not yet born. This is what the argument she posed through her seminar. And really, this seminar helped me to be enabled to heal the culture of India. India today, we see a lot of atrocities that are happening. The surrogacy and the spam banks and the banks of womb that are emerging in our society, that like of Western society. In this situation, in order to eradicate the social stigma and to have a natural birth of a child, what we need to do, it is just we need to change our attitude, our concept about the abortion. Actually, God is the author of life, and He is the author, and He will be the final end to take and to give and to take our life. It is not we who to judge the people, or it is not we who to make a mold the human being which are yet to be born or are born. It is all depending on God, and it will be on Him that as He willed. So we are all called to be good in this society, to give, to live, and we have all received a life as a gift, and we have received also a mission to be fulfilled in this earth. This is what we need to, first of all, to heal our society. We need to change our attitude, and our attitude towards women, our attitude towards abortion, and our attitude towards life as overall. This is what a message I received from this seminar, and it's wonderful. Thank you.